Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto becomes an intelligence ninja that the world has never seen before. Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. The sky was painted red as the familiar light of the sun began to creep up onto the skyline. The Hokage faces then gained their unusual rugged luster that made it seem as if the stone faces were somehow luminescent. From where he was standing, Naruto couldn't help but admire the sight. His facial expression was somewhat constricted, taut, hiding beneath it the more jovial expression that remained unseen under the guise of an impassive visage. There was something about the Hokage faces in the morning that made him want to stop whatever he was doing and look at them. The sight of what he was to become was there, right in front of him. He was so close yet so far. That was why he did this every morning. As soon as he would wake up, before he did anything else, the first thing that he would do was go onto the roof of his house and stare at the stone faces. This soothing and silent daily ritual was a constant reminder of why he was still even in this piece of shit village. Naruto inhaled sharply, exhaling with a sigh as a cool morning breeze caught the back of his neck, sending shivers down his spine. Today would be his first day at the Ninja Academy, and he would be entering it as the fabled bane of Konoha, the failure, and not what most people should have seen him as, a true genius. As Naruto took a step back, he spun around on his heel and began to walk back into his shabby little apartment. His footsteps came to a sudden halt when he felt who it was that was standing behind him. "I suppose you're another one who came to eliminate me, eh?" A small smirk appeared on his face as he realized that the man standing behind him had simply pulled out a kunai. "Aren't going to answer me, at least bad-mouth me like the rest of them did," Naruto suggested before he spun around once again. When he turned, he centered his gaze onto a tall man with shaggy black hair and beady eyes that matched in color. He wore a standard Jonin vest, indicating what rank he was, and his face laced with a thin coat of early morning perspiration. Honestly, Naruto could not tell whether or not the morning air produced the man's bit of sheen, or whether it had been created by his growing fear of Naruto. The fact that Naruto did not have that same coat of perspiration confirmed that it could not have been the humid air, but it was in fact the latter, which brought Naruto's deeply complex mind to the conclusion that this black-haired Jonin was afraid of him. If so, then why try to attack him? Then, without giving it much thought, Naruto decided to ask the question circling his mind out into the air. "If you are so afraid of me, then why are attempting to assassinate me?" Naruto's intense gaze locked onto the Jonin's own wavering one. After shifting his eyes from the floor to Naruto, then back to the floor, he responded, "Because demons like you don't deserve to live," yelled the Jonin as he charged at Naruto, kunai in hand. In a split second, Naruto could see that the man's determination to kill him was as strong as ever, like a steel chain that refused to be broken. Whatever vendetta the Jonin may have had against him, Naruto was completely unaware of and did not bother to ask. Personal grudges were things that could corrupt even the greatest of warriors. Even so, to foolishly attack someone solely on the matter of a grudge was unacceptable when it came to Naruto's standards. If he had to be honest with himself, he would have to say that the quality of ninja had fallen in Konoha, and to his dismay, he was unfortunate enough to be born in with and after 2 generations of worthless shinobi. He would have to talk with Aji-san about that later. The foolish Jonin's stance position was horrible. It was like some form of a porous taijutsu stance, full of openings and potential counters as well. Naruto knew not to kill him, but it was always fun teasing those who contended to take his life. With one quick motion, Naruto dipped under a wild swipe and clipped the man off his feet. Before he could get up, Naruto pressed his bare foot against the back of the man's head, smashing his face into the concrete roof and knocking him unconscious. As the last of the man's moans and groans of pain died out, Naruto suddenly felt a superb sense of vindication. It was hardly a battle to be proud of, hell, it was hardly a battle at all, but Naruto always seemed to find some feeling of pride whenever he discomfited the futile efforts of his would-be assassins. Slowly Naruto grabbed the back of the man's collar and, make one hand seal, disappeared in a swirl of leaves generated by some artificial wind. Naruto reappeared in the Sandame's office, with his unwanted guest still hanging him by the nape of his collar. Naruto looked up to see the third Hokage sitting at his desk with his hands folded. At the sight of the unconscious Jonin, the old man just slapped his forehead and sighed heavily. "Another one? How many times has it been this week? 2 what 3 attempts to take your life?" Naruto simply nodded at the last number the Hokage stated. "I thought so," he said, his expression looking surprisingly lugubrious, contrary to his normal impassive state of face. This man, Naruto hefted up the Jonin with one arm, hanging him into the air, so rudely interrupted my morning and tried to kill me. "Don't worry, I did not harm him. The worst of his injuries is probably a broken nose. Would you be so kind as to make sure that he gets sent to Ibiki, and so rightfully gets what he deserves? Sure thing, Naruto-kun, I will keep note of your request. But I think that now would be the time for you to leave. And why would I do that? Naruto asked, putting on some fake schoolboy charm. The sandaime just grimaced and sighed once more. Because Naruto, you're in your pajamas. Naruto's eyes widened a little bit. He had almost forgotten that he was wearing them. The blonde just scratched the side of his head, in an obviously false bit of confusion. Oh, and what's the problem with that? For all of your uncanny perceptiveness, Naruto-kun, you sure seem to not notice that I myself have company and, before you came, was in a very serious discussion with my subordinates. Slowly Naruto began to turn around as the old Sarutobi stuck his arm out, swaying it from one side to the other, as he was trying to display some oddly antique trinket. Naruto, allowing his body to follow his grandfather's gesture, turned fully around, only to come face to face with 3 ANBU shinobi. They all wore their distinct animal mask accordingly, the one on the left, who took on the likeness of an eagle, the on the right wore the mask portraying the face that Naruto for some odd reason mistook as that of a baboon. Finally, the Anbu in the middle, who was with no doubt the captain, wore the oddly modified and makeshift visage of a tiger. Although the boy could not see it, he could not help but think that the 3 Anbu all had their mouths agape behind the effective obscurity of their mask. They probably couldn't believe that the brat, the lowest of the low, the bane of Konoha, had defeated a Jonin, while he wasn't an academy student yet, and he did it all in his PJs. Naruto mentally prided himself at the sight of the subtle shock. Even an Anbu couldn't hide their emotions from the ever-perceptive Naruto. However, he did not act upon his thoughts and simply stared at them, creating an awkward tension in the room. His eyes darted on and off the 3 individuals before him until the weird sensation that arose in his gut forced him to look away and back toward the third. Sorry for the interruption, Aji-san. Nevertheless, before I leave, I simply must make a comment on the way shinobi are acting nowadays. Honestly, the overall mindset of shinobi in Konoha today has suffered a serious downgrade from what it used to be. It's actually making me question the merit and literal quality of the ninja in our village. That goes for all levels. That comment caused him a series of 3 loud coughs from behind that were obviously meant as a joke and obviously directed at him. Anyway, like I was saying, I simply suggest that you input more of your time into enforcing the law of shinobi decorum around the village, because I don't think that this man here, he pointed to the brunette Jonin who he still subconsciously had dangling from his hand, attacked me just because of my unfortunate condition here. The way he held his blade, with determination, with fear, with anger. It was obvious that he had some sort of personal vendetta against my prisoner and me. It would be foolish to let all shinobi in Konoha harbor a mindset so wrong like this man here. With that said, Naruto dropped the man to the floor. A loud thump indicated that he had landed on his head. He gave Sarutobi a curt bow and smile, followed by the same action being performed to the 3 Anbu in the room. I'm sorry to have taken your time. With that, Naruto made the hand seal that he used to bring himself to the Hokage's office in the first. Wait, Naruto-kun, how did you know that this man attacked you because some grudge? Sarutobi asked with an amused expression on his face. Being as perceptive as he was, Naruto knew that the third was even more perceptive than he was. Moreover, because of that, he knew that the old man never asked him questions like that unless he was trying to gauge Naruto's skill at reading people. However, for every smart question that Sarutobi asked him, Naruto had an equally smart, or even smarter question waiting for the old man. This time the blonde genius was at a loss. Let's just call it a hunch, Naruto said. Sarutobi chuckled. Have a nice day at the academy, Naruto. It's the first day, you know I will, Naruto said with a smile before disappearing in a swirl of leaves, much as he intended to do before. As the blonde boy faded from vision, the Anbu tiger in the middle spoke up. So that's Uzumaki Naruto, the infamous bane of Konoha. Yes, and it would do you well not to look at him like other people do, Saito. And what would that be, Hokage-sama? Saito asked, inclining his head. As a demon and a failure, when in fact he is very much the opposite. He is a genius. Saito was silent after that. If the Hokage felt so strongly about this boy that he would go so far and call him a genius, then it was apparent that the kid was the real deal. He had heard stories about the boy who was Kyuubi's vessel, but he had heard otherwise from what the Hokage mentioned. Now his mind was swarming with a mass of curiosity, and it continued to swarm and buzz around the one question, the centerpiece that was brought to his attention. Exactly who was Uzumaki Naruto? Naruto arrived at the front gates of the Ninja Academy like any other kid his age would. He walked. It was a tad slow for his taste, but every once in a while it felt good to act normal for once. However, acting was all that it was. There was nothing in or of the boy that when compared to other children his age would be considered normal. Not his mind, not his speech, not his intelligence, and definitely not the giant demonic fox sealed away into his abdomen. But putting those qualities aside, Naruto was still moderately normal. While walking through the huge gates, he suddenly remembered what it was that Aji-san had told him about 2 days ago. Naruto, now that you're going to be joining other students around your age, I want you to act your age, he said. Why does it really matter? Naruto asked. Yes, it does. I'm not saying that you should act like a complete idiot and withhold back every bit of knowledge that you have so far retained. I'm just saying that if you want to be treated differently, then it would be in your best interest to act the same. Kids your age don't usually possess information about the things that you do, so basically what I'm saying is don't show off. Hi, Naruto responded. That is what he intended to do. He planned on coming to the academy and not show off his skills. The reason for him starting the academy in the first place was so that he would advance in his ninja rank. If he were to ever attain his dream of becoming Hokage, then he would at least have to become a genin first. As Naruto continued to walk toward the front door of the academy, he suddenly froze, taken by shock. Around him, he noticed dozens of kids being dropped off by their parents. Kids his age giving goodbye hugs to their loved ones as they began their first days of school. Just like them, he had made it here, his first step to becoming an actual shinobi. Too bad he didn't have anyone to share the moment with. Naruto had often thought what it would be like if he had parents, but today that thought became all the more important to him. He wanted someone to hug goodbye like everyone else. Unfortunately, he was not blessed with a family like other kids were. But then again, other kids were not blessed with a mind and body like his. He was cut from his introspective thoughts when he heard someone's voice. Hey, are you lost or what? Naruto's head snapped to the source of the voice. When he looked up, he saw what the hell was he seeing? He didn't know whether or not he was looking at a person or a fucking ghost. The person in front of him was the very image of the word noble. The man in front of him had jet black hair that ran down past his shoulders and was left to hang loosely. He wore robes of pure white. From where he stood, the man's robe seemed to avoid touching the ground and just hovered lightly above the dirt, as if the most likely soft linen was tantalizing the ground because it could not be touched by the ground. It was what gave him the ghost-like appearance, and what made him noble. Even in the dirtiest and dustiest of places, the clothing of a noble refused to dirty itself. Despite his absurdly clean attire, Naruto noticed some other distinct features on the man, like the structure of his jaw and the intensity of his eyes. Oh, and his eyes were the most distinguishable feature about him, for they were white and pupilless. This man standing in front of him was a Hyuga. From what he had seen, Naruto knew that Hyugas were supposed to be stuck-up douchebags. Well, are you going to answer me, or are you going to just stand there like a silent fool? Yep, he was right. This person was definitely a douche. No, I'm not lost. Actually, I was just on my way to class. It's my first day, Naruto said with such cool innocence that seemed to ignite the much larger man even more, although his emotionless face mask that all Hyugas seemed to wear at all times seemed to aid in hiding it. Even so, that didn't mean that Naruto still couldn't read the man's actions. He could tell by the slight twitch of the Hyuga's fingers when he spoke and the barely visible 1mm arch in his eyebrows that the white-eyed ghost was enraged merely at the concept of standing next to him. Again, the Kyuubi no Kitsune caused someone to judge him before they got to know him. And they let you of all people in. What a shame. It seems that Konoha has fallen down to low standards this year. Well, I do beg your pardon, but what exactly do you mean by they let me of all people in? Nothing at all. I thought as much. Naruto smirked as the man simply swallowed down the massive amount of Hyuga pride that his clan was so famous for and turned around, facing a girl who up until now Naruto hadn't noticed. Hinata, this is important. This is where it starts for you. If you fail, then you will have lost all honors from me. By the end of today, I want an oral report of today's happenings and a sense of your status in the classroom. You are a Hyuga, so I expect you to behave as such. From what Naruto could see, a girl around his size stood virtually petrified in front of the Hyuga. She hid it with a mask of impassiveness. She was hiding her fear, that both Naruto and the male Hyuga knew it. I will try my best. No, you will be the best. Understood? Hinata nodded. Yes, father. Hinata said, her eyes a bit downcast. The man just nodded and turned around, with a grace that only a Hyuga would possess. He gave Naruto one last huff before walking past him and out of the academy gates. Naruto could tell that the man had just resisted the urge to sputter out any further words. Perhaps he was afraid of breaking the law that the Sandaime had put into action by uttering one too many words about the nine-tailed fox. So now Naruto was just standing with some girl who he now knew to be Hyuga Hinata. In addition, from his own general knowledge she was the heir to the Hyuga clan, therefore making the previous man whom she called Father Hyuga Hayashi the most stick-up-the-ass Hyuga you could ever know. Naruto, always being one to break the awkward silence between the two, spoke up first. So you're a Hyuga? Her head quickly shot up as she looked at Naruto, only to bring her gaze back down to the ground. Why yes, she said. Naruto was a master at reading people, and it was obvious that she had definite self-esteem issues to work out. He could tell that it was a fact just by looking at the way she stared at the ground. Call it a hunch, but he could tell that Hinata was extremely nervous for some reason, which made it even more surprising to him when she spoke. Ayano, but I've never seen anyone talk to father like that. Weren't you scared of him? Naruto grabbed his chin between his forefinger and his thumb. Well, a little, but you just got to know how to speak to them. No offense, but the Hyuga are an extremely intimidating clan if you don't know how to keep your cool around them. Hinata just nodded and returned her gaze to the ground. By this time the both of them were walking toward the front door along with the rest of the students, when Naruto stopped and said, "Oh wait, you go ahead, I've got to get something really quickly." Slowly the lavender-eyed girl nodded, her lower lip hanging a bit, and continued into the academy with the rest of the students. As the last of the students said goodbye to their parents, and went inside, Naruto slipped off to a distant corner behind the school where no one could spot him. He came to a stop underneath a tree that cast a lengthy shadow that would do well and hide his presence. Hanging from a sturdy branch was a lone swing. There it stood, gently moving in unison with every minuscule breeze that moved it. There Naruto sat down. "How long do you plan on following me?" Naruto said, looking further up into the branches of the large tree. There was a slight rustling of leaves when an Ambu-nin jumped down from the tree. He was wearing a tiger mask. If Naruto's memory served him correctly, this was the same captain that he had seen in Aji-san's office in the morning. Then the idea came to Naruto that Gramps might have requested that they keep watch over him and report back if a problem were to arise. Naruto mentally sighed. That is so like Aji-san. He thought to himself. Well, if you're not going to answer me, then I'll just assume that the third sent you, correct? The tiger-faced Ambu just nodded. For what reason? On that question, the masked nin reached into one of the pockets that were strewn about his gray vest and pulled out a small red scroll that Naruto himself knew as a message from the Sandaime. Naruto stuck his hand out, and the scroll made the transition from the Ambu's hand to Naruto's much smaller hand. The Ambu spoke up. He told me that you needed to sign this before you entered for your first day at the academy. It is a proposal for you to join the Ambu by next year when you graduate and become a genin. For this to work, you'll need to sign this before the proposal is made, and in about a year's time, after much negotiations with the council, you will be admitted to join the Ambu. Naruto raised an eyebrow. It was obvious that Aji-san planned for this to happen. It was strangely odd that this person said that it would take a year for the whole process to be over and done with. And what do you know, Naruto was now entering his first year as an academy student. Naruto chuckled. Tell Aji-san that I said no. The Ambu's head suddenly flickered up in shock. What do you mean no? Naruto-san, you're passing up a chance that rarely comes to those around your age. It wouldn't be wise to pass up a chance of this much value and rarity. Listen, what's your name? Yuji Saito. My name's Saito. Why? Listen, Saito, rarity or not, me becoming an Ambu member is up to me and me only. Even though I'm already able to join the Ambu squads as I am now, I simply have no interest in joining. And I doubt that getting the council to pass me into the Ambu Black Ops will not be as easy as you have just now stated. In reality, I don't feel like dealing with the hassle and bullshit that I know the council, both shinobi and citizen alike, will so generously hand me. Do you honestly feel that way? Yes, I'm not interested. Naruto then handed him the red scroll back, which Saito slipped back into the pocket from whence it came. But tell Aji-san that to save that proposal, in the future I might be interested. Understood. Saito said with a curt bow. You really are the real deal. Hopefully in the future I may have the privilege of working with you on my squad. Maybe. Naruto responded. With that the Ambu captain disappeared. Without a trace, no leaves, no wind, no smoke, nothing at all. He just disappeared. How do they do that? I might consider joining just so I can learn how the hell they do that. Naruto then hopped off the swing and walked back to the front of the academy. He couldn't believe that it was his first day, and that he was already late. 1 year later, Naruto let out an exasperated sigh as he stared aimlessly into the distance the window had, to his delight, provided for him. He was staring out the window of his classroom, and he was seriously bored with this place. He had wasted an entire year in this academy learning things that he had learned when he was 7. He found it useless to sit here in a class that gave him no challenge such as this one. Although this class proved to be interesting at times, he still could not see the point in paying attention to things that, frankly, would do him no good in actual battle. At his level, an enemy that he would encounter would, with no doubt in his mind, require much more than academy-taught tactics to defeat. It just went to show a person exactly how strong Naruto was and how strong he led others to believe he was. For an entire year Naruto had stayed in the academy solely for the purpose of becoming a genin, and while he was here he hadn't shown anyone a bit of what he could really do. Every time he was called to demonstrate some low-level technique of some sort in front of the class, he would always make sure that he always gave the instructors the required minimum that they had asked for. In doing that, Naruto's ranking in the class always remained at a constant neutral zone. That was good enough for him. Naruto, are you even paying attention? Naruto looked in the general direction of the person's voice. He looked up to see his teacher, Yumino Iruka. Over the course of this year, Iruka had become, in Naruto's eyes, a father figure. He was the only other person besides the third that the blonde ever was seen around. Most of the time it was at Ichiraku's ramen shop or just walking around. Iruka, unlike everyone else, actually saw him for who he was and not as the demon that destroyed the town. Yes, Iruka, I'm paying attention. Oh really? Then would you demonstrate to the class what a proper henge of our Hokage would look like? Do I have to? I'd much rather just sit down. This comment earned the boy a series of suppressed chuckles made by the other kids in the class. As Naruto continued to look at Iruka, he noticed a vein popping put from the man's forehead. You okay, Iruka? That's Iruka-sensei, Naruto. In here, I am your teacher. Now get your behind up here and do what I asked you to. Fine, Iruka-sensei. Naruto slowly got up to the front of the class. He paused for a moment, taking the time to look at the children whom he was forced to call classmates for an entire year. The faces of those whom he had taken a liking to, but then again there were some people here whom he couldn't stand. Naruto's eyes shifted to a certain black-haired Uchiha named Sasuke who was staring out the window much he was only a moment ago. Then his gaze scanned the room, going over each and every girl who had deemed themselves part of the Uchiha fan club, then going over to the girl who declared herself president, Harino Sakura. He couldn't stand her. Just the thought of how she fawned over the Uchiha was enough to sicken him. The pink-haired girl was truly desperate. But just because there was one fan club didn't mean that Sasuke was the only one with admirers. Over the course of these many months, Naruto himself had accumulated a fair amount of female attention that in his mind had the ability to compete with Sasuke's own admirers. But just because he had fangirls didn't mean that he was particularly proud of the fact. His eyes then moved over to the girl who declared herself as president of his fan club. She had dark purple hair and white eyes, Hyuga Hinata. He didn't hate her at all, which is more than he could say for the other girls who had taken a liking to him. As he locked eyes with her, she shuddered and brought her head down to her fingers, which she just so happened to be pressing together at the time. Well, Mr. Uzumaki? Iruka said impatiently. Naruto turned his head over to Iruka, and gave him a very grim glare, which Iruka himself returned with a death glare of his own. It had become their thing, to glare at each other intensely when there was nothing serious. It constantly reminded them of how close they actually were to each other, whether they knew it or not. Hi, Iruka-sensei, Naruto said while making a single hand seal. A light haze of blue chakra enveloped his body, and after a spontaneous generation of smoke, what was once Naruto had become a perfect copy of the Sandaime Hokage. In the visage of the village head, Naruto turned his head toward Iruka, the eyes of a wise man staring intensely at the Chunin. May I take my seat now? Naruto, well done, you can sit down now, Iruka said, sounding slightly defeated due to the fact that Naruto had completely proven him wrong and was in fact paying attention. Well, at least that's what Naruto led him to believe. Henge were so easy for the boy that he really did not have to pay attention. Things like that were second nature to Naruto. Thank you, Naruto said as he went back to his seat. On his way back he couldn't help but notice the many murmurs and whispers being made, most of which contained his name. Still, despite the great adulation flowing toward him, Naruto just sighed lazily and took his corner spot back at the window so that he may relax and tune Iruka out for the rest of the lesson. He would make it up to the man though. Maybe some miso ramen after class would help settle his debt for not paying attention in class. As Naruto's mind slowly slipped into the world of daydreams once more, Iruka's had reduced itself in his mind to little more than a smothered muffle. Sounded like a person trying to speak underwater. Now Naruto was back in his peaceful place, where he could not be bothered, where he could not be perturbed, where no one could reach him. Naruto jerked when he felt the odd sensation of someone jabbing him in his ribs. Maybe his peaceful place wasn't as impenetrable as he would have liked it to be. Naruto turned and saw a girl with shoulder-length jet black hair and blue eyes looking at him. Her elbow was slightly extended toward his ribcage, indicating that she was the one who poked him. She wore a tan ninja training shirt underneath a faded black jacket that was tightly suited to accentuate her body. On her lower body she sported a pair of ninja training pants that were identical in color to her shirt. Those too were tightly suited. Her pale skin seemed to go in conjunction with her hair and eyes. This was an odd combination, gave her what Naruto would label as slightly refined facial features. Saying that she was pretty would be horribly tautological and, quite frankly, the understatement of the century. "Naruto, did you not just get in trouble for daydreaming?" she whispered. "Ah, come on, Sanai, you know that I don't have to pay attention in this class," Naruto said with a disarming smile. He knew this girl as Fumina Sanai. He had met her within the first week that he began the academy. Naruto then heard another whisper come from behind him. "Yes you do, Naruto-kun, you'll fail if you don't pay attention." Naruto turned his head and saw behind him another girl. Her hair was dark as well, but not black like Sanai's. It was more of a dark auburn that when in the right light could be considered red. She wore a light blue shirt that loosely draped over her body and dark navy blue ninja training pants. Her face was smaller, and even more refined than Sanai's, but it bore a stark resemblance to the black-haired girl. The only reason that such a resemblance was even present was solely based on the fact that this was Sanai's sister. Her name was Kono. Naruto met her around the same time he met Sanai, seeing as how they were always together, and just like her sister Sanai, Naruto had become great friends with Kono as well. To say that Naruto had become friends with them was an understatement. He had become attracted to them both, and it wasn't the type of attraction that everyone who saw them would think of. But it's not like there was no reason to be attracted to them. Half of the guys in Naruto's class were attracted to them both. The two sisters' beauty had made them into daily eye candy for most of the other male students. Sure, they were pretty, but that was not the only reason that Naruto was attracted to them. While not one of the clans known for their outstanding strength or Kekkei Genkai, the Fuminas were known, however, for their extreme cunning and wit. They were not as strong as clans like the Hyuga were or Uchiha were, but they certainly made up for their physical impediments with their extreme intelligence. Fuminas were extremely smart. One example of their wiles would be during the Great Shinobi War, where the battle tactics of a Fumina led Konoha to victory against opposing Iwa forces. The end result of that battle was a dangerous depletion of the Iwa's forces that ended up with them losing up to half of their entire military. It would be a sin to say that a Fumina wasn't intelligent. It was not only their looks that Naruto liked about them, but their Fumina wit as well. Like him, they strove to think in the most logical way possible, and did not settle to leave anything unanswered. It was what he enjoyed about their presence, the fact that they were like him. While they were not like him when it came to strength, for he was many times stronger than they were like him when it came to their minds. In other words, they were geniuses, and Naruto had always liked to surround himself with those who were similar to him. "No, I won't, Kono-chan. This class is way too easy to fail." "Too bad Sanai-chan here doesn't see that." Naruto was suddenly assaulted by the intense feeling of another nudge to the ribs. "I told you not to add the chan to my name, you idiot." "You know how much I hate it," Sanai said in a barely suppressed whisper. "Ah, but it makes you angry when I say that, and you're cute when you're angry." Sanai said nothing and inched her head back a few inches, an intense blush staining her face a bright red. Kono couldn't help but giggle at this. Well, that is until her sister gave her a patented Naruto death glare. Naruto always knew how to get inside of Sanai's head. For such an outstanding genius, the girl was also an outstanding prude as well. "Hey, pay attention." Instantly all three of them snapped towards the sound of the loud voice, which was a very irritated Irika. "Naruto, Sanai, Kono, do you intend on talking this entire class? What I'm about to say is of great importance, so you must pay attention, understood?" "Hi, Irika-sensei," Naruto said, answering for all of three of them. Irika nodded and turned his gaze back to the rest of the class. He brought his two hands, and while making a fist with one hand, his other hand was left open. He thus suddenly brought them together. "Class, as you all know, today is the day of the advancement exam." This comment stirred up a multitude of groans and moans from the rest of the class, with the exception of a few well-behaved students. "I know, settle down, it's not that serious. It's simple." A hand signed, and behind appeared two small wooden tables, and on top of the tables were rows of Hideites or ninja headbands, all engraved with the Konoha symbol and shining brightly, indicating that had just been burnished. Irika turned and allowed his arm to sway out toward the two tables. "These headbands are what you will be aiming for. If you pass, you will each receive one Hideite, indicating that you have become official ninja of Konoha. The exam itself is simple, really. I will call you up here one by one, and I will ask you to do three things. 1. Make a decent henge of me or Mizuki-sensei, who will be here shortly. 2. Make a total of 3 stable bunshin. And 3. Irika then smiled. The third thing that you will have to do in order to become official nin of Konoha is walk past me and take your Hideite. Iruka smiled when he saw the bright smiles of his students, and heard their excited voices. Some of them even got so excited that they stood up, saying that they wanted to be the first to go. But Iruka denied, telling them wait. The exam will not begin now, however. Iruka's smile grew wider when heard his class cry out ah again, with the exception of the more well-behaved students in the class. Don't worry, we have to wait for Mizuki to return, therefore I will allot you all a small break period of 15 minutes. Be back in class by then. Hey, and don't take this break lightly, you could use this to your advantage. Perhaps these 15 minutes could give you all a little time to prepare for the exam. Other than that, you are dismissed. With that, all of the students jumped up, some louder than others, and began leaving the classroom. Naruto then felt the terrible sensation of Sanai's elbow in his ribs once more. This will be fun, won't it? Naruto nodded. Nah, I don't think it will. Things like this usually bore me to death. He then smiled at the scowl that made its way onto Sanai's face but grimaced when he felt another dull pain enter his ribs on his opposite side. He turned to see Kono standing there. Well, they only bore you because you don't know how to have fun. Already tired of this interminable assault of elbow nudges, Naruto sighed. Whatever, let's just leave, he said as he walked out of the classroom, holding both sides of his ribs. Both girls both giggled and slapped hands, following him out of the room. It seems as if they had succeeded in successfully ticking Naruto off with the elbow nudging, which they both knew was one thing he hated, which was the reason they did it so much. Naruto sat on the sturdy branch of his usual tree with a swing on it. Ever since his first day at the academy, it had become his spot, the type of place that allowed him to think peacefully to himself. But inner thoughts did not seem like options for him right now. Come on, Sanai said, grabbing hold of Naruto's arm and trying to pull him off his branch. She was currently standing on the side of a tree trying to pull Naruto down. Even though they were not up to his level yet, the Fumina sisters were enamored with the knowledge of techniques that were well beyond academy level. For example, the technique of tree walking that Sanai had been using to follow Naruto up his tree and bug him for what seemed in his mind as an interminable amount of time. We've got 15 minutes, so spar with us, Sanai urged, to which Naruto just shook his head. Since his beginning days at the academy, Sanai had always wanted to spar with Naruto, but he always denied. She was just too below him. No, I don't feel like it, so stop biting me. Why? Because I said so, Naruto responded. If he had actually told them the truth behind his reasons for not fighting them, and mentioned that if Sanai were to fight him, she would be fighting someone who had trained almost every day of his life with the Hokage of the village since he was about 7, she probably wouldn't be so eager to have a bout with him then. As Sanai gave Naruto's one final tug but sighed when he did not budge, she let go, but before she could get halfway down the tree, she let out a startled squeak as she felt something land on top of her, knocking her down only for her to land flat on her stomach. When she hit the ground and turned her head, she saw Naruto sitting right on top of her. There was a certain sly look in his eye that made her feel suddenly uncomfortable. She felt even more on edge when he leaned in closer to her face. You, instead of sparring, how about we do something else, Sanai-chan? The tone in which he spoke brought fire to Sanai's face as she blushed. Why, you know that I don't like it when you see call me Chan, she said, her speech chopped into bits and pieces. Oh really, then how about this? Sanai's eyes widened when he felt Naruto's hand slowly slide down the side of her rib and move up toward her chest. Under Naruto's weight, which he held back a bit, Sanai squirmed and struggled in an attempt to free her body. And Naruto, what are you doing? Oh, nothing, he said, sliding his fingers across the base of her C-cup-sized chest. Much to his pleasure, Sanai did nothing but let out a small squeaky moan. But it was not like she could do anything else. Naruto had her pinned and playing the part of the victim. Naruto, stop, you pervert. I'm not a pervert, I just felt like getting my revenge on you. You bug me, I make you feel uncomfortable. He leaned in even closer. Now is that not that fair? Naruto moved in closer but jerked back when he felt the structure of a foot jam itself into his ribs. Naruto, what are you doing? I don't want you touching my sister in any weird places, you perv. Naruto looked up, while rubbing his side. That one was going to leave a mark. Again with this perv thing. I am not a pervert, I just felt like getting your sister back for bugging me. Kono looked at Naruto skeptically, but dismissed it as nothing important. But it is not like things like this didn't happen often, they happen all the time. Sanai would bug Naruto, then Naruto would get her back by attacking the prude within her, and him doing something that he did not count as perverted but rather as revenge. Therefore, over time Kono had become sort of the guardian who always stopped Naruto from exacting too much revenge on her sister. However, being as perceptive as he was, Naruto quickly became fully aware of why she always played this role. It was simple, she obviously held certain feelings of affection for Naruto as well, but she just did a better job of hiding it. Maybe the only reason Kono stopped Naruto all the time was that she felt jealous from all of the attention that Naruto usually gave Sanai whenever she bugged him. Naruto raised himself off the ground, dusting himself off. Well, if you plan on bugging me, then what is it that you propose that we should do? And he looked at the position of the sun in the sky, the 10 minutes we have left. Both girls shrugged. Well then, bye, said Naruto as his body began to fade away into nothing until there was in fact nothing standing in his place. With wide eyes both girls looked at each other, shocked at how easily Naruto had bamboozled them with a mere bunshin. Whether he had switched with the clone before they found him, or during their conversation, they did not know. Then a thought came to Kono that made her angle her head and rested it on the palm of her hand. She turned to Sanai. Hey Sanai, if those were just bunshin, then how come it could touch you, and why was I able to kick? Sanai herself then adopted the same thinking pose as her sister. Wait, Yen, now that I think about it, that clone felt real, but it was still a clone, wasn't it? Both sisters stood frozen, pondering on the question of just what it was that Naruto did to his bunshin to make them physically able to touch. We've got to find Naruto, and fast, Kono said, dashing off, soon to be followed by her sister, who yelled something that sounded like wait up. Naruto smiled as he got the mental information that his clone relayed to him. That was a good thing about his clones. If they were to do something like train or learn a new technique, the real Naruto would get that mental information relayed back to him, and he would know that technique, or have that experience from training. But maybe using shadow clones was a bit too much, especially since it was around the Fumina sisters. They probably wouldn't even notice, but considering how smart they were, Naruto would not be surprised if they had questioned him about his abnormal clones. Still, it was always nice to mess with them. A brief breeze brushed the back of his neck as he stood up. There was about 10 minutes in his break left, and he had no way to spend it. He jumped down, descending onto the ground from a random rooftop that he had for some reason decided would be relaxation spot for the day, and while coming down he saw a certain raven-haired boy whom he had come to dislike. Sasuke was running down the road, with almost all his strength, as if he was being pursued by someone. Uchiha team, what the hell are you running from? But to Naruto's displeasure the boy just ran past him without so much as a word. Well, that was rude. Naruto looked down. About 3 seconds after Sasuke had passed him, a low vibrating rumble began sound down the street where Sasuke had just come from. On the ground, tiny pebbles danced vigorously from the vibration of the rumble. Naruto looked to his left, and his eyes pulled themselves open in pure terror, as he realized that he was now looking at a huge cloud of dust being kicked up by an even larger mob of girls. Naruto's stomach sunk at the sight and his face paled. He wasn't looking at girls. No, he was looking at something much more dangerous: fangirls. As they got closer, Naruto could not move, frozen like a block of ice. Then he heard one of them say, "Hey guys, look, we got lucky. Look at who is in front of us. We can take him and Sasuke." Naruto's eyes widened when all the girls locked onto him, and he glanced to his right and could see Sasuke still running down the street. "Oh shit!" Naruto said as he realized exactly what was about to occur. He did the only thing that he could do at the time and ran for his life, taking flight in an attempt to catch up with Sasuke. "Naruto!" He grimaced as he heard the mob of love-struck females yell his name just as they were yelling Sasuke's but mere seconds ago. Still Naruto ran, and in about 10 seconds, he caught up with Sasuke, positioning himself right next to the Uchiha. "What the hell happened?" Naruto asked Sasuke, having to raise his voice over the many loud yells and squeals made by their pursuing fangirls. "Nothing, Yudobai was just walking around and they found me." While in his mobile position, Naruto slapped his forehead. "You idiot, just walking around? Listen team, for future reference, you never ever just walk around when you have fangirls. Next time if you want to just walk around, make sure that you're walking around the rooftops where they can't get you, understood?" Naruto scowled when Sasuke just nodded and turned back to the street in front of them. This was most unfortunate. Now he was involved. What was supposed to be a simple 15 minutes of tranquility had turned into the most intense, and possibly last 15 minutes of his virgin life? Who knew what they would do if they ever caught him or Sasuke, which was highly unlikely. Naruto could have lost the girls on both he and Sasuke's tails, but it was kind of fun seeing the look of pure terror on his face. To think that this was the first time Naruto had ever been chased by his own fangirls. It was fun. He didn't even remember why he had spent his entire academy year cleverly evading them. This was in fact a rush. Naruto looked into the sky once more. The sun had slightly shifted. That gave him about 7 minutes. "Sasuke, do you think that you can keep this up for 7 more minutes?" he asked in a loud voice. Sasuke merely nodded once more, then swallowed hard. Perhaps he was trying to force down the mass of weakness trying to surface itself in the form of fatigue. In other words, it looked as if Sasuke had been running for quite some time now. But Naruto decided not to ask exactly how long and went back to the task at hand. Kono walked back into class with her head leaning toward the ground. She felt defeated. She and Sanai had wasted so much time trying to look for Naruto, and they didn't even find him. Damn, just where the hell is he? She said in a low voice, and she went to take her seat, which was directly behind Naruto's. Who knows, he might be trying to avoid us, he might be running from us, Sanai said, sitting down in her seat with an equally lugubrious expression on her face. Nope, he's running from his fangirls right now. No way, he wouldn't do that, would he? Kono said, sounding a bit unsure about her words. Both girls let out a sigh. It took some time, but after sighing, they both noticed something. That almost all of the students that had returned early to class were male. Feeling a bit uncomfortable with the lack of female presence, Sanai decided to ask her question into the air. Hey, where are the rest of the girls? There is only 1 minute left in the break. One of the boys in the room answered her back. Who knows, they are probably off chasing their Sasuke-kun somewhere on the premises. He had dark brown eyes with gravity-defying hair that stood up and resembled the outline of a pineapple. And how do you know that, Shikamaru? Nara Shikamaru, another class genius. He, along with her, Naruto, and her sister, was one of the smartest kids in the class. However, unlike her, Shikamaru had preferred to do nothing with his amazing brain power. A lazy genius indeed. Come on, do you honestly think that those love-crazed girls have something else better to do in 15 minutes than pursue their dream boy? It did make sense, so she nodded at the lazy boy's answer. Yeah, you're right, I guess it makes sense. A low rumble came from outside the classroom door. Upon hearing this, Sanai knew exactly what was about to happen, which was what happened all the time. Sasuke would come busting in with a mob of girls behind him, and then a huge dispute over who would get to claim the boy would arise, causing a ruckus in the classroom. That's what she expected. However, what she saw was completely different. When the double doors of the class blew open, not only did Sasuke come rushing in, but Naruto flew in as well, and as expected in came a huge chunk of the female portion of the class behind them. They yelled, they screamed, and they argued not only over Sasuke but Naruto as well. Sanai had never noticed it before, but Naruto also had attracted a lot of female attention, more than she ever bothered to comment on. A tight, compact ball formed in Sanai's stomach as she watched her friend get argued over by the many girls. What was this feeling? Jealousy, perhaps? No way, why would she be jealous if a bunch of girls were to fight over Naruto? She looked over to her sister Kono and saw that she too watched Naruto as his fangirls groped and tugged at him, her face graced with a mask of intensity. The tight ball loosened a bit in her stomach when she saw Naruto drag himself out of a sea of cheerful fangirls, and she was hit with a warm sensation of relief, mostly because Naruto had come out untouched. But why she was feeling relief at this confused her even more, which added to the already deep pool of unease and potential jealousy that lied deep within her mind. When Naruto flashed her a brilliant smile and wave, Sanai's face lit up like light bulb, but she quickly retreated to her usual expression as she found herself blushing from her reaction to Naruto. Slowly, Sanai looked at Kono, who had one eyebrow raised with a certain glint in her eye that made her wonder just what it was that was going through her mind. Before she knew it, Naruto had walked up to them and Sanai found herself staring down at the floor. Sanai-chan. Sanai twitched at the mention of the word chan but continued to stare at the ground, not saying a word. You okay? You look a bit disturbed, Naruto said, taking his seat next to her, causing the girl to move over just a tad to the right and away from Naruto. The tight ball came back, this time pulling even harder. Every time Sanai thought of something and tried to get it out of her mouth, the ball would end up dragging those words back down into her stomach, leaving her unable to speak. What's wrong with me? Why am I acting like this? Was it because of what happened? Her face flushed when she thought of what it was that Naruto's clone had done to her under the tree. Hey, you okay, Sanai? Yes, she's okay. Kono had cut in, drawing in Naruto's attention onto herself. Never mind her though, I want to ask you something. Under the tree during the break, your clone, why was it able to touch Sanai? Naruto's eyes widened, but he smiled afterwards. I anticipated something like this. If you must know, then I'll tell. He motioned for them both to come closer and leaned in himself. When the three of them were close enough, he began to speak. He was not just Bunshin. The only reason that he could touch you and you could him was because he was a Kage Bunshin. He said this in a low and barely inaudible whisper. With wide eyes, Sanai and Kono both retreated with shocked expressions. Kono was the first to lean back in. Wait, but that is a Jonin-level technique, she said. Ah, Kono-chan, beautiful and intelligent as ever. I'm not surprised that you are aware of the level of that technique. Just wait. Let us save this talk for after the exam, and then will I tell you everything, the both of you. Okay? Both girls nodded and Kono leaned back into her seat to await Irika and Mizuki's arrival. The entire time Kono's face was sanguine and heated, most likely from that last comment made by Naruto saying that she was beautiful. The loud arguing and fighting over Sasuke had subsided, leaving everyone to seat themselves and settle down. Naruto cringed as he looked at the aftermath of a person who was once Sasuke. He sat alone and with a blank expression on his face. The face of the violated and touched an expression ever since he had begun the academy he had grown accustomed to. It seemed as if everyday Sasuke had this expression plastered on his face, all because of the fangirls that attempted to toady him every day. It was not the first time Naruto had seen Sasuke like this after being chased by his fangirls, and he doubted that it would be the last. Then Naruto thought to himself about how different his reaction was compared to Sasuke's. Naruto had avoided his own fangirls up until now, and in his mind, it was not as bad as Sasuke made it seem. The blank and scared expression on the Sasuke's face brought a curl to the young blonde nin's lips. It was always fun to see that stick-up-ass Uchiha with that expression on his face. Two loud sounds suddenly filled the room, causing everyone to turn their heads, and standing in front of the two wooden tables holding Hideite were the two class instructors, Irika and Mizuki. The two Chunin had their arms folded, with both large smiles and bright eyes. Okay, listen up, I won't waste any time, so take your seats. The class followed accordingly, which made Irika nod. Good, now the rules are simple. All you have to do is come up to either me or Mizuki, and do what I have instructed for you to do. Irika then shifted his gaze onto Mizuki. Anything else that you would like to add? Mizuki, a tall man who had silver hair and a jaunty expression on his face, angled his chin up toward the ceiling in a thinking pose. Then brought it back down. Well, I'll just tell you that we plan to have you come up 2 by 2 in order to quicken the pace, and let's just say that we have a little surprise for you at the end, he said with a smile. Naruto watched Mizuki closely. There was something about the man that Naruto found to be suspicious. He couldn't completely put his finger on it, but there was something about the Chunin that made Naruto think that the man had something to hide. For a long time Naruto watched this man, yet nothing came up to affirm that Mizuki bore ill will toward anyone or anything in this village. So after a while Naruto stopped trying to look beneath the surface and just see Mizuki as an honest school instructor. He tried and failed. Naruto knew that there was something about Mizuki and he would find out, but for no only the exams mattered and not Mizuki's hidden motives. Okay, that's all, Irika spoke up, then let's begin. We will call you up in alphabetical order. First up Aburame Shino. Then Mizuki spoke. Second to go, Akimichi Chuji. Come to my table and get this exam over with. Therefore it began. Both Irika and Mizuki began calling students up 2 by 2. Naruto knew that having the last name Uzumaki meant that he would be one of the last ones to be called, but it didn't matter. It was fun to watch some of the pathetic excuses for Bunshin and Henge that some of the class produced. As expected, when Kono and Sanai were called, they performed well above Irika and Mizuki's expectations, each of them making not 3 but 10 stable Bunshin appear and then going on to produce 2 perfect copies of Irika and Mizuki. And although Naruto felt that their display of skill was a bit ostentatious, he still prided himself with the fact that like him those two were true geniuses. It took little over 20 minutes to get to the last 2 people, him and Sasuke. Uchiha Sasuke. Mizuki said. Uzumaki Naruto. Irika said. Both boys stood up, walking to the front of the room with the rest of the class to their backs. Standing almost shoulder to shoulder, they both looked at each other, and when Naruto locked-eyed with Sasuke, he no longer saw the blank, languid eyes of one who had just been violated. Instead, he saw the eyes of an Uchiha trying to prove himself. That was good. That's what Naruto wanted to see. Fire. However, it was a shame that it had to be Naruto who doused the flames burning within Sasuke. Well, actually, it wasn't all that bad at all. Naruto, you both know the drill, Irika said. Naruto and Sasuke nodded and they both made a hand seal. In unison, the two cried out, Bunshin no Jutsu. A dim haze of chakra surrounded the both of them, and it flickered about. In less than 3 seconds the class was staring at 20 Narutos and Sasukes combined. The rest of the kids all gasped in awe at the amount of ease at which both boys produced the technique. Irika and Mizuki, however, stayed silent. A slight angle bent the sides of Irika's mouth. That was good, a bit pretentious but good. On to the next portion. Make a henge of me and Mizuki. Naruto mentally sighed. This exam was almost getting too easy. He glanced once more at Sasuke before dispelling his clones. Sasuke himself did the same. Again they both made a single hand seal and in unison they said, Henge no Jutsu. There was a generation of smoke and before they knew it, Irika and Mizuki were seeing double as they both gazed into their own eyes. Both instructors took a step back out of shock. Wow, Naruto, Sasuke, you pass. Irika said. Right, you have, go on and claim you headbands, the both of you. Mizuki added in. With the said, Naruto and Sasuke both walked up to, claimed their Hideites from the wooden table, and went to take their seats. When he sat down, Naruto felt someone tap him and he turned only to come face to face with the smiling Kono, who gave him a thumb up, simply chuckled and turned back to Iruka and Mizuki, but not before giving Sasuke a quick glance. Good, Iruka said while clapping his hands. The sound was intensified by the walls of the classroom. Now that the advancement exam is over, we can move on to the next and final portion of the day. He swayed his arm over to Mizuki, who then took over the reins. Now Mizuki began. If you all remember, I said that there was a little surprise at the end for you all. Well, get ready, because an awkward silence settled in the room. Most of the kids were literally on the edge of their seats. Today is your last day here as students, and tomorrow you all will be assigned new sensei. This comment drew a rather unexpected reaction from the class. Silence, nothing but silence could be heard as the students now turned Gen and said nothing. It was a delayed reaction, but Iruka for some reason felt a pang of relief when he heard almost all of his students yell out what. He was expecting that reaction. I know, since you are all now Genin, you no longer need to stay here and learn about the basics. Because, well, you already know them. Meet here tomorrow in the morning and then you will all be assigned to your new Jonin sensei. You are all dismissed. Naruto, along with everyone else, stood up and left, leaving their former Chunin sensei to talk among themselves. It could be said that at this very moment Naruto was upbeat. He was now a Genin, but unfortunately, he knew what being a Genin would mean. It would mean that he would now be pressured even more than he already was to become an ANBU member. As Naruto walked down the streets to his destination, which was the Hokage Tower, he ignored the stares and glare coming from the many merchants and street vendors who were aware of his condition. Not even they could penetrate the solid wall of concentration that he had set up in his mind. All he could focus on right now was what exactly he was going to say to Aji-san once he got there. He was fully aware that the Sandaime greatly wished for him to join the ANBU, and that he being an official Genin now meant that he was now of official ninja rank. And according to the rule of ANBU admission, any ninja of any rank was eligible to become an ANBU. The whole idea of Jonin only being able to become ANBU was just a lie. That false dogma had only risen because getting into the ANBU was so freaking hard that usually only Jonin tried. Knowing this, Naruto grimaced heavily, not wanting to think about the most likely uncomfortable conversation that the two would most likely have. At times like this, Naruto had actually wished that Sanai, or even Kono, were here to bug him, and keep his mind off of the awkward topic that kept poking him in the back of his head. Ex-Hokage's office, as sighed heavily as he entered his surrogate grandfather's office. The old man looked up from behind a small mountain of papers and smiled. Ah, Naruto-kun, you have returned. I assumed that the advancement exam was today. Did you pass? Naruto raised an eyebrow before he pulled up a seat from the corner of the room and sat down in front of the Hokage. He crossed his arms. What do you mean you assume? You're the Hokage, for Pete's sake, Aji-san. You don't assume stuff like this, you already know it. And come now, do you really think that I could ever fail a test that easy? That's an insult to me. That test was way below my level. I only jest, Naruto-kun. I'm well aware of your ability, he said with a slight chuckle. Yeah, I know, but it's always fun to play along, Naruto said, responding with a bright smile. There was a brief pause and the both of them then burst out in a unified bit of laughter. It was always fun to share a laugh with Aji-san every now and then. Not many people could say that they hung out with the Hokage of the village. It was just one of the many perquisites that came with being who he was. Maybe the Sandaime was one of the reasons why Naruto had decided to stay in this village. Sarutobi's face then suddenly shifted to an expression of seriousness. Upon seeing this, Naruto quickly mimicked his action. The old man then arched his back forward, while placing his elbows his desk and resting his head on the backside of his palms. Naruto always found it surprising at how Aji-san could switch between moods so easily. Naruto-kun, now I'm sure you already know what I'm about to say. Naruto mentally sighed, throwing his gaze down at the floor. Yes, I know, he responded quietly. Naruto then looked back up at Sarutobi. But is it really a matter so important that it should be pressed onto to me like this? Sarutobi sighed. Naruto-kun, you know that I only want the best for you and I want to see you succeed. This chance could release you from the life you are living now. But if you feel as though you should not accept this issue that I presented to you before, then by all means I will not stop you. Let it be as you say, Naruto-kun. Now Naruto was put out of his comfort zone. Whenever Aji-san wanted him to do something, he would always ask Naruto in ways that he considered being sly and cunning. It greatly disturbed him at how adept the old man was at appealing to his conscience, but what more could you expect from the village Hokage? As kind and gentle as he was also manipulative and clever. Naruto swallowed down the lump beginning to form at the base of his throat. Do you really want me to join the Anbu that badly? Naruto asked. Indeed I do, Naruto-kun. That offer I made you last year on your first day at the academy. I did not make it because I thought you would prove to be a great contribution to the Anbu Black Ops, but because I knew you would. But like I said before, it is up to you. Again with that cleverness of his, Naruto looked Sarutobi dead in the eye. It was always like this. They would have a serious conversation and Sarutobi would ask something of Naruto. And as much as he did want to, Naruto was always the one who ended up caving in first. It was something he hated about being under the wise stare of the Hokage, and he berated himself for it. Sarutobi cleared his throat just a bit too loudly, letting Naruto know that he was getting impatient with the boys stalling. The pressure began to build and Naruto feared that history would repeat itself, and that he would end up saying something that he really didn't want to. I'll join, Naruto said in one sudden voice. He mentally cursed himself for being so weak, but he would not give in without leaving behind his mark. But Naruto said, continuing on in a smooth and restricted voice. I will only join if I am allowed to do one thing. Sarutobi smiled, knowing that he had already won the battle. Nothing Naruto could say would be enough to get this smile off of his face. What is it? He said, sounding slightly content with the world, his smile still beamed, like a white arch of light. Give me permission to show my true ability from now on. Sarutobi's eyes widened and the smile faded, and along with it the arch of light returned to nothing. He was wrong. There was something that Naruto could say. What, Naruto-kun, are you insane? Are you aware of the social implications that doing something like that would bring you? Yes, I am. However, if you decline and do not allow me to do as I please, then the Anbu will be nothing but a thing of the past. The creases on Sarutobi's forehead resurfaced as he was suddenly caught in a deep train of thought. Perhaps I have taught him too well? He fooled me into fulfilling his wish in return for him fulfilling my wish. Clever. Does he even know the reason why I set the law that forbids citizens and shinobi alike from uttering a word about the Kyuubi? If I allow him to show his power, then it can only lead to one of two things. Either people recognize him for his strength, or they do the exact opposite, and shun him out of fear of a growing influence made by Kyuubi. But this is what he wants. Naruto, I'm swimming out into dangerous waters by allowing you to do this, but... Sarutobi looked up at Naruto and smiled. Okay, Naruto-kun, you win. If you join the Anbu, you will be allowed to display your power to the public. But rest assured you will have plenty of time to show what you are made out of. For as you know, the entire process of applying someone as an Anbu member will take an immense amount of time. Most likely up to a year's time. I wanted you to take the offer last year so that by tomorrow you would have been able to start your duty as an active Anbu member. Unfortunately you declined. Feel secure because you now have a year's time to wait until you become Anbu. So enjoy it. Naruto nodded happily as he quickly stood up, and upon looking at the boy's optimistic demeanor, Sarutobi grumbled. He really had taught Naruto too well. The boy was already intelligent enough as he was. Add the logic of a Hokage and you've got a problem on your hands. Thank you, Aji-san. I greatly appreciate it. Naruto said as he got up, a small curl bending the sides of his lips. I'll report to you after I meet my Jonin tomorrow, but I'm guessing that you already know who that person is. He left with a curt bow and walked outside of the office. A smile on his face, knowing that he had finally been allowed to show his ability as he pleased in the village without consequence. He would no longer have to keep up the facade of the Kyuubi boy with average skills. He would now be known as the genius boy with the Kyuubi sealed inside of him. It was a future that he greatly looked forward to, and the thought of such a future carried him in good spirit all the way to his small apartment, where he stopped at the door. Tomorrow is a new day, he said while making a reach for the knob, and opened his door. He turned back and glanced at the sky. The ominous twilight looked different today. The skyline was a shining bright red, as if Kami's hand had just swept over it with a fresh coat of paint. Who knew, maybe in the morning the paint would dry and the skyline's color would deepen so that when he woke up the next morning he would be able to gaze upon his very own crimson dawn. Once again Naruto began his day on his rooftop, just like the one before. He stood, pajamas and all, basking in the warm light of the sun. As of now his gaze was centered at the sky. Based off what he had seen yesterday, he was wrong. The sky hadn't deepened into crimson, it just looked normal. Not that normal wasn't good and all, it just meant that the day would be boring to say the least. He first noticed it when he felt the lack of commotion. There was nobody here who wanted to kill him today. It was strange, but Naruto always looked forward to seeing the unconscious faces of those random nin who always tried to exterminate him, and the lack of their presence made him feel uneasy. He lowered his gaze down onto the great stone face that he had come to admire so much. As usual, they held that same rugged brilliance that made them shine with artificial luster. Maybe the day wouldn't be as boring as he had thought it would be. His eyes then settled onto the stone Hokage face that was set all the way onto the fat right. The man with spiky wild hair, the fourth Hokage. Naruto then brought his hand and ran it through his own unruly golden locks. His eyes never left the fourth's face. It was just too much of a coincidence that he resembled the fourth. It often bothered him how much they bore a resemblance to each other. Who are you? Naruto uttered in a low tone before letting his hand fall back to his side. The wind then kicked up as it usually did every morning. Naruto savored the crisp feel of the wind caressing his body. He especially enjoyed the breeze between his knees that came with the light breeze. The Yondaime was the one who sealed the Kyuubi into him. Strangely, he was perfectly fine with that. The only thing that bugged him was why he chose him out of all people. What could have driven the man to think that Uzumaki Naruto would be a good jail for the fox, despite the fact that Naruto actually was a good jail for the fox? It was a bit too much to think about and one of the very few things that Naruto found complicated, so he decided to drop it for the moment, and just get back to his monument gazing. But for some reason Naruto kept getting the feeling that someone was behind him, watching and waiting carefully, a silent predator waiting to kill its prey. However, Naruto would never allow himself to be called prey. He would not become some lurking wolf's breakfast. He first let out a sigh then, "Hey, how long do you plan to just standing there and doing nothing?" At first was no response. For a second it seemed as if Naruto was talking to himself. But a millisecond before Naruto opened his mouth to follow up on his question, he heard a low chuckle followed by the sound of clapping. His eyebrow rose into the shape of a boomerang as he heard the muffled voice of the potential assailant. Impressive. You're only a genin, and you sensed me so quickly. You know there are a lot of jonin who wouldn't be able to sense me standing directly behind them like you did, nor would they be able to sense anyone else in my faction for that matter. And what would that faction be? Naruto asked with interest. He didn't bother to turn for he already knew the answer. Why, the Anbu Black Ops, of course. It took you only 4 seconds for you to notice my presence. Given that time at your age, I'd say that you're the real deal. Naruto made a quick turn around and faced the man behind him. The first thing he noticed was that the man was considerably taller than he was, forcing him to look up. The second thing that he noticed was that this man was in fact an Anbu member, mask and all, and that he was wearing a wicked tiger mask. He labeled this man as the Anbu captain he had seen in Aji-san's office last year, although he couldn't fully tell. But Naruto kept getting the feeling that the Anbu captain was smiling behind his animistic disguise. Well, now that we've established that I'm Uzumaki Naruto, care to tell the reason for your arrival? Cutting right to the chase, I see. Well, if you must know, I'm here to deliver to you a message. From, Naruto said, crossing his arms. From the third. Seeing as how you will be joining the Anbu next year, our Hokage thought that it was a good idea to train with the Anbu from now on. With that being the case, I made a recommendation for you to join my team. I've seen the results of your work. That jonin you brought us yesterday was proof of your skill. That was only a result of your power, but I want to witness it in action, with my own eyes. Therefore, he paused for a moment, and reached into one of his side pockets, and pulled out a small black scroll. I want to give you this. He held the scroll out for Naruto to take, which he did. The boy then tore the paper seal and opened it horizontally. As expected, the surface of the paper was riddled with what looked like directions to some unknown area. The myriad of text and apparent longers bored Naruto out of his mind by him just looking at the scroll. Directions? He asked. To where? The captain chuckled once more. To the Anbu training ground, of course. By the end of the day I want you to head to that location to meet me and the rest of my team. Naruto's eyes widened a bit. The rest of your team? Well, if you're going to be part of this team, then don't you think that it's a good idea to meet everyone? Well, not necessarily. I mean, Naruto was cut off when the tiger-masked Anbu waved his hand in the air. Please don't answer that, he said with a light laugh. It was surprising to Naruto how much emotion this Anbu member was actually showing. A normal Anbu wouldn't show anything and just remain stoic and emotionless as expected by Anbu protocol. This guy must have been one of the stronger ones. There was something that intrigued Naruto about this man. He couldn't quite put his finger on it, but he knew that the man was strong. He would obviously make for an efficient teammate. It would be unwise for him not to take him up on his training offer. Okay, I won't answer that, he said as he looked scroll up and down. Training with the Anbu. No offense, but considering that I have trained with the Hokage for 6 years, wouldn't that be a step down in my training? None taken. I understand your concerns perfectly. However, do not worry. We may not be as strong as the Hokage himself, but we are close. I think that we will be enough to keep you on your toes, the captain said, brushing off his shoulder. Fair enough, then, it said. After I meet with my jonin, I'll meet with you afterwards. The tiger-faced mask dipped as the taller man gave Naruto a curt bow. Thank you. I hope you don't disappoint us, he said upon rising. I won't. Oh, and by the way, what's your name? Yuji Saito. Naruto then nodded and turned away with a satisfied sigh escaping his lungs. He glanced back and there was nobody standing where Saito just was. Damn it, how do they do that? He said as he rolled the scroll back up and began walking back into his little apartment. He also made it a mental note to ask Saito exactly how Anbu just disappeared like that when he got to their first training session. But for now he figured that getting ready for his normal life as a genin would suffice. Naruto sniffed in a noseful of fresh air as he stepped up to the front gate of the Fumina compound. Although they weren't that powerful a clan as the Hyugas or Uchiha's, the Fuminas still had a family compound that was massive, even when compared to that of the other more powerful clans. The brilliantly polished front gate towered over Naruto's short stature, lustrous mahogany gleaming from the sun's light. Naruto paused for a moment, to admire the wood. Its sheen almost made the wood look as if its surface was wet. Geez, the Fuminas must be one insanely smart clan to be able to live in a place like this. Their door just screams rich. Naruto brought his hand up to the dark wood and knocked 3 times, loudly. There was no response at first, which made Naruto contemplate on whether or no he should knock again. But when he heard footsteps approaching he abandoned those thoughts. The double doors cracked open then fully swung open revealing the lush green expanse that was the Fumina courtyard. While the place really was huge, he never ceased to be amazed every time he saw. Inside were a myriad of individual houses and homes, most of which had 2 or more floors. The inside of the manor was so large that there were even small individual roads run through the entire place. Naruto had seen this so many times before, but damn, it never stopped amazing him. Naruto was pulled out of his trance of adulation when he noticed 2 slender women walk into view from behind the 2 massive doors. Both of them beautiful, red-haired and wearing 2 matching blue kimonos with black stripes. The watery color of their kimonos stick out in contrast to their bright red hair. It was almost comical how their heads stuck out so much. Naruto soon found himself wondering why they chose to wear such colors. They both stopped in front of him, putting on 2 bright smiles. "Ah, Naruto-san, how are you today?" They both said in perfect sync. It didn't surprise Naruto that they spoke simultaneously, considering that these women were twins. However, what did surprise Naruto was the amount of irony that went with the situation. I'm fine, Chigusa, Nagisa, and how are you doing today?" "Fine," they both replied cheerfully. "Sanai-chan and Kono-chan will be with you shortly, why don't you come in and wait for them?" Naruto nodded and walked past the 2 redheads, who closed the doors behind him. In his mind he couldn't help but think that they were just naturally nice people. Whether or not they knew of his status as Kyuubi's jail, he did not know. However, if they did know then they surely didn't let it show, for they actually showed him kindness and compassion, not what he was used to. "You can sit over there and we'll go fetch them," they said in unison, pointing to a bench near a miniature garden on a strip of grass. Naruto smiled and nodded. He then made his way over to the bench and took a seat. By the time he had sat down the 2 twins were gone, in search of Kono and Sanai, leaving him to sit by himself. Naruto leaned his head back against the bench, so that his eyes were angled toward the sky. For several minutes he sat there staring at the vast blue sea of air, his mind wandering to and fro on random subjects until it was brought back onto the subject of Nagisa and Chigusa, and how they somehow spoke in unison seemingly all the time. He had heard of twin telepathy, but until now he hadn't believed that it existed. How do they do that? He whispered to himself, just when a gentle breeze rolled in and he began to enjoy his moment of solitude. "How does who do what?" asked an unquestionably female voice. Right after he heard the voice, a pretty brunette woman walked into his view. Because of the way his head was positioned, it looked to Naruto as if this lady's body was upside down. Hello Fumina-san. I was just wondering how your 2 gatekeepers, Nagisa and Chigusa, have such syncopated speech." Naruto leaned forward so that he was in an upright position and turned so that his full view was on the woman in front of him. He noticed that the lady was wearing a decorative black and white kimono with a red sash. She had long jet black hair and blue eyes, just like her daughter Sanai. This was in fact Sanai and Kono's mother, Mei Fumina. She was a nice woman whom Naruto had grown to become very fond of, and not just because of her ample bosom. "Oh, those 2 always do that. I'm still trying to figure out how they do it. Maybe if I was a redhead like they are, they would tell me, don't you think?" she said with a warm smile, which Naruto returned with one of his own. Well, maybe being a redhead might have solved it, but unfortunately Mei wasn't born a natural redhead, unlike all the other Fuminas were, with the exception of her 2 daughters. The reason for her dark hair was that she was not actually a blood-related Fumina. She just became one when she married into the clan. That being the situation, most people outside of the clan who did not know that Mei wasn't a real Fumina would always deem her as an anomaly inside the clan for not possessing the bright red hair that had come to be recognized as the Fumina trademark. It was a color that was passed down from generation to generation, similar to the Haruno clan, which was known for having unnaturally pink hair even in their men. Are Sanai and Kono ready yet? Naruto suddenly asked. Mei then crossed her arms, pushing up her large assets, which no doubt drew Naruto's attention to them. Luckily she hadn't noticed. Yes, when I left the main compound they were already dressed. They should be here shortly. But until they come, can I ask why you are in such a hurry? Well, today is the day that we all get to meet our Jonin senseis, and I was a bit excited to meet them. Naruto replied. Oh yes, how could I have forgotten you know? A sly look suddenly slid onto her face and she leaned in, accidentally giving Naruto a better view of her chest. Sanai and Kono came home really excited yesterday. They kept talking about who their new sensei would be, and since they already know, they were wondering who would be on their genin teams, and I couldn't help but overhear them both mention that they really wanted you to be with them. Naruto, with his head inched away, fought down the urge to blush. Man, if this was what Kono and Sanai would look like in the future, then he would have no problem being on their teams as genin. He had always thought that Kono and Sanai's mother was a bit too friendly with him. What was she trying to do, hook him up with one of her daughters? Well, obviously, but Naruto still played along. Really, they said they wanted me on their team. I couldn't imagine why. He said smoothly with outright fake innocence. Mei laughed aloud. Oh, I think you know, Naruto-kun. I think you know exactly why they said it. You can't fool me with that baby face act. Remember, I'm a Fumina. She then tapped her head. I can see right through that. His eyes narrowed. I know why, and you know as well, but just for kicks, why don't you just tell me why you think they said that? Well, we are good friends and all, he replied. Maybe playing along with a Fumina wasn't a very bright idea. She may not have been a blood Fumina, but damn, she was just as smart. Although he was pretty sure that his response was sufficient enough to get her to drop the topic. True, but I didn't hear them speak about any of their other friends. The entire night it was just about you, Naruto-kun this and Naruto-kun that. Naruto's head flicked up when he heard that Kono and Sanai had actually called him Naruto-kun. He always thought that they hated addressing people with such friendly endings. Well, Sanai at least. Naruto's open action didn't go on unnoticed by Mei, for she then brought her face closer to his. He stayed silent. Oh, did I say something that interests you, Naruto? Damn it, she is good. Well then I guess that he was about to open his mouth when he heard 4 sets of footsteps. Okay-san, stop harassing him, that's really rude, you know, said Kono's voice from behind him. He turned to see her and Sanai walking up behind. Following right behind them were the 2 gatekeepers, Nagisa and Chigusa. Naruto mentally sighed. He was safe. But he knew that if he stayed any longer, Mei would ferret out what he was about to say before. Okay, now that we are all here, he looked at Sanai and Kono, we can all get to the academy now, right? Right. Okay, so we'll be going now, he said as he grabbed both Sanai and Kono by the shoulder and dashed off with them into the distance, and out through the Fumina compound main gate. Mei then giggled and glanced at Nagisa and Chigusa. Young love, funny isn't it? She said, to which the 2 twins responded to with 2 syncopated giggles of their own. Mei then bowed to the 2 twins and bid them a good day. It was funny. Upon leaving the manor, Naruto had kicked up a rather large cloud of dust. Since when was the boy that fast? After a minute of running, Naruto had finally slowed and allowed Sanai and Kono to gain possession over their own arms once more. The looks on both their faces were confused, unwitting, and most of all, exactly the same. They had turned onto the street that was home to the famous Ichiraku ramen shop, the Ichiraku district. Because of the ramen bar's popularity, this long street had adopted the name of its most well-known attraction. It was a good thing too. This district was one that was just a straight path to their academy, merely a long line of shops going in 1 or 2 general directions. This was the street that the trio had always taken to the academy, just as they were now. But there was something weird about today's walk to the academy, something odd about Naruto. Sanai and Kono didn't let this go on unaddressed. Hey Naruto, you okay? Sanai asked the blonde. Naruto slipped his hands into his pockets and straightened out his back, his quote, cool guy walk. Of course, I'm doing just fine, I'm just a little tetchy. I'm itching to find out who my new Jonin is. Sanai just nodded and looked back in front of her. For some reason she helped but think that there was something different about Naruto this day. His entire aura seemed different, like he had suddenly gotten a hell of a lot stronger in a way. She cast a glance toward her sister, who didn't miss a beat, and nodded. Either Naruto had changed or their mother had said something really unusual to him, and knowing their mom, it was most likely the latter. They would both find out. Hey Naruto, what exactly were you and our mother talking about? Kono asked suspiciously. Naruto just chuckled, still keeping his cool stride that made him look as if he was gliding. Oh, nothing important. I just asked her how your two twin gatekeepers speak like that. He responded. Oh, you mean Nagisa and Chigusa? Yeah, we've been trying to figure that out for the better part of our lives as well. Sanai said with a small giggle. It seemed as if he had thrown them off of the topic of their mother for the time being. However, he mentally sighed when Kono again asked another question. Are you sure that's what you two were talking about? Because to me it looked she was talking about something a bit more personal, Kono said, narrowing her eyes. She knew that he was hiding something and she was determined to find out what it was. Well, it doesn't matter if I tell them, Naruto thought to himself. He should have guessed that one of them would try and impugn what it was he was saying. So to save time and to save himself from suffering the torment of any future diatribes, he decided that he would tell her. But if she got mad, it wasn't his fault. Well, if you insist, then I guess that I'll tell you. Then a certain aroma wafted into the air, tickling Naruto's nose. He sniffed a couple of times into the air. Ramen. He then heard the low growl of someone's stomach and his head flicked toward Kono, who had a slight blush on her face. Hey Gomen, I was so pumped about today that I forgot to eat breakfast, she said with one hand on the back of her head and the other rubbing her stomach in a circular motion. Sanai let out a slight giggle at how careless her sister could sometimes be. Her nose then picked up the sweet aroma in the air as well, and she let out a soft sigh at the smell of sweet ramen. Sometimes the Ichiraka district could take someone's stomach for the wildest of rides. The pleasant fragrances were something that she could always expect to meet whenever she walked through here. However, Sanai wasn't expecting what happened next. In a wild turn of events, her stomach let out a low raspy growl of hunger, as well a really loud one too. It was as if there was some huge hulking beast residing within her abdomen waiting to satisfy its anger. Her face flushed and she let out a loud giggle, attracting a bit of unwanted attention from the villagers. Haha, well, I guess that I'm a little hungry. I almost forgot that I didn't have breakfast either, she said defensively. Well, it's obvious that you two both didn't have any breakfast, and by the sounds of it you're both extremely hungry. I think the best thing for both of you would be some breakfast at Ichiraka's. I mean, while in Ramen District you might as well have something to fill you up, Naruto suggested while they walked, which both girls agreed to with a unified nod. The two Fuminas then stopped and allowed their noses to point them in the general direction of the Ichiraka ramen bar. As they turned and began to walk the other way, they stopped and turned back to Naruto. You're not coming? Kono said. Naruto just shook his head and kept on walking. He threw his hand up and yelled back at them. No way, I've got other things to do besides watch you two eat. I'll see you at the academy. He then continued down the street, leaving the two sisters to stand in each other's company. On the walk to Ichiraka's, the two sisters mostly stayed silent. They were thinking the same thing. However, either would come out and say anything. They let their thoughts swim around in their heads all the way to the ramen bar, where they sat down next to each other. You know he's hiding something, right? Kono said to her sister, who nodded. Due to their proximity of the food, the smell of ramen had grown stronger, causing Kono to lean on the counter, allowing her nose to be pleased by the captivating noodles. Yeah, I know, and it's probably something that our mother said to him. I just hope that what she said didn't have anything to do with us, Sanai replied. She then flicked some of her hair back behind her shoulder. Don't worry, we'll find out before today is over. All we have to do is find a way to annoy him long enough to get him to tell us. Hello, if it isn't the Fumina sisters, and what will we be having? Said a gruff voice that caused both sisters to look in front of them. Standing there was the old man that owned the place, Ichiraka Tuchi. He and Naruto were on very good terms due to the blonde's loves of ramen, and because of their affiliation with Naruto, Sanai and Kono were liked by the old man as well. Seeing as how it was a bit too early for ramen, Kono decided that something simple would do. I'll have steamed rice and miso soup with grilled fish and some seasoned nori. The elderly shop owner nodded with a smile and yelled back to order to his daughter Ayam, who replied with a yell of equal volume. Tuchi then turned to Sanai. What about you, Sanai-san? What will you order be? He said. Sanai then contemplated on whether or not she should go for something overly extravagant, but then remembered that this place was a ramen bar. Their specialty, most likely, wasn't breakfast. That being the case, she decided to match the simplicity of her sister's order and order something plebeian. I'd like some tamagoyaki with a side of miso soup as well, and some pickled daikon to go with it. Your orders will be ready soon, Tuchi said while going into the back to help his daughter prepare the food for the two sisters. Kono then watched the man until he was out of sight, and once he was, she turned to her sister again. Today, we'll find out what he's hiding, she said, to which Sanai agreed. Yeah, Sanai was cut off in mid-sentence by another low growl coming from her stomach. She gave a slight blush. Yeah, we'll get him, after breakfast, Sanai said in a slightly embarrassed tone. Agreed, Kono said. Back with Naruto. Naruto had guessed that this was a good place to stop before he went to class. After all, if he was going to show off his power today, then this place would be essential. After he had separated from Sanai and Kono, instead of going straight to class, he drifted off to another part of the village. He found himself in an empty street that was lined with dozens of stores and weapon shops. This was one of the more unknown streets in the village, the one that nobody lived on. Naruto continued to walk down the desolate road until a certain shop caught his eye and he stopped. Primarily the reason why no people lived here was mainly because this part of the village was in proximity to the Forest of Death. It was literally on the edge of Konoha. The villagers were too scared to live here. The rumors surrounding the forest certainly spread fast around the village, and because of that this place was like a barren wasteland. But just because it wasn't occupied didn't mean that the stores got no business. In fact, out of all the shops in Konoha, these shops got the most business. There was only one reason for this district's financial success, and that reason was because this avenue was the district where the most of the highest-ranked ninja in the village shopped. This avenue was in fact the Anbu district. This was the place where mostly only Anbu and a few select jonin lived and shopped for weapons and supplies. Because it was on the outer edges, it was ideal for the Anbu members who were constantly patrolling the perimeter of the village. Surely this wasn't the type of place genin would be caught dead in. Good thing Naruto was no regular genin. After his brief pause in front of the store, he read the name on the dusky wall above the entrance to the shop. His lips then silently mouthed out the words, Gekani Clothing Shop? His eyebrow curled. What a mysterious name, he said aloud. However, despite its name, he still just shrugged it off and walked inside. Hey, excuse me, but he stopped when he stepped inside. You could have said that he was overtaken by all the extravagant merchandise in the shop, however that wasn't the case. He was stopped by one thing and one thing only. The numerous glares that were aimed at him the instant he walked inside. Inside were numerous ninja, all of which were made up of Anbu and high-ranking jonin, most of which were either staring at him or off observing some sturdy piece of clothing. Despite the people in the way, Naruto had noticed that the shop was rather spacious, although one could not tell when looking from the outside. Naruto looked around left and right until he finally spotted and walked up to the cashier's counter. The cashier himself was a large, burly, bald man wearing a stained brown tank top. He couldn't see his pants for they were hidden behind the long wooden counter. What he could see though was the man's upper lip curling with was most likely disgust. His small beady brown eyes were aimed directly at Naruto's own blue eyes. By the way he folded his heavily muscled arms and stuck out his rather large belly, Naruto took it as an attempt to intimidate him. Hey kid, just what the hell are you doing here? He asked in a demanding tone. Although Naruto thought that his ostentatiously loud voice was a bit annoying, he decided to answer him back. Is it not obvious, Baka? I'm here to buy me something new to wear. Upon being called an idiot, a wide vein popped up on the burnished head of who Naruto thought was the shop owner. Naruto smiled inwardly. If he had drawn such a reaction from this man, then it wouldn't be hard to get what he wanted without a fight. Well, maybe not. The large man slammed his hand on the top of the counter. Hey, listen here, runt. I'm not in the mood right now to play games. What's a fucking genin like you doing here in this part of the village? You shouldn't even possess the whereabouts of this place. Naruto noticed that where the man's hand had struck the wooden counter, the wood itself was horribly cracked. Naruto was neither stupid nor unobservant, and because of that Naruto could tell right away that this man was no shinobi. However, he was outrageously strong. Well, I'm here and I possess the whereabouts of this shop, so therefore it should be obvious that I am no normal genin, Baka. Naruto's voice carried a bit of hostility which further pissed the large man off. Strangely, none of the other jonin and Anbu seemed to care about what was occurring at the counter. Did this happen a lot? Because it sure seemed like it. No matter though, if a fight were to spark up, Naruto knew that he would be able to take this guy. Plus this was the best place possible to display his power. What better place to show off what he could do than a place where all the strongest nin gathered? Plus I have this. Naruto then pulled out the black scroll that Saido had given him. I got the directions from this thing here. The man's eyes widened. It turned out that the scroll that Saido had given him was actually a map of Konoha, and not just any map. It was a map from an Anbu's vantage point. Therefore it showed you the location of many of the shops and hidden training grounds used by Anbu in the village. Okay, short stuff, say what you have to say before I lose my cool, he said. Unfortunately for Naruto, his height was always a topic of ridicule, and what exacerbated the current situation was that his head was barely a mere foot above the unnecessarily high counter. That being the case, only Naruto's neck could be seen. By all means, big man, lose your cool, I've got time. Listen here, I haven't killed you yet only because you're a child. But if you don't show some fucking respect, then I'll just have to make you. Besides, what makes you think that I'll give you of all people my service? That comment caused Naruto to raise a brow. What do you mean, me of all people? Naruto asked. Oh, that's right, you don't know. I would tell you, but I'm afraid I'd get killed if I did, he said with a smile on his face. Oh, that's what you mean, man, that's old news. See, but the thing is, you can't speak of it, but I can, and trust me, I know what's in me. I am very much aware. That comment drew the attention of the many Umbu occupying the shop. Now I have a special order to place in for you. I want something better fitting than this old jumpsuit here. Take it or else. Naruto spat his last words out with a bit of venom, and judging by the man's personality, this should have been enough to lure him into a fight. You fucking little runt, I'll kill you! He yelled out. Just come and try, Naruto said with a smirk. The man hopped onto the counter, producing a loud thud. Now that his lower body was within full view, his brown pants could be seen in all their dusty glory as he prepared to launch himself at Naruto. Finally a chance to show his power in front of some ninja who actually mattered in the village. As Naruto readied himself and tightened his fist, he heard a voice. Yoru, stop this at once! The voice cut through the air like a kunai, completely drawing the attention of everyone in the store. The air was heavy and everything was silent. Damn it, now who the hell would try to stop me from kicking this guy's ass? Naruto thought to himself, already annoyed. He noticed that the large man had a scared expression on his face. He looked past him and saw a tall and slender brown-eyed elderly man with long gray hair that hung to his back. He was wearing a purple shirt which was tucked into a black hakama. Yoru, attacking customers is unacceptable, and you know it. Now get back behind the counter and let me handle things here. Sorry boss, it won't happen again. Yoru stammered out. He then slipped down behind the counter and glared at Naruto, who reciprocated his glare with a glare of his own. However, his focus was broken when he heard that old man's voice one more. I must apologize on Yoru's behalf, he gets like that from time to time, he said while giving him a courteous bow. Naruto saw that Yoru himself was having a tough time trying to hold back his anger and chuckled. No need to apologize, after all I was part of reason for the fight almost occurring. Naruto responded. Still, it is my obligation as this store owner to take responsibility for employees. Naruto's eyes widened a bit. Oh, so you're the store owner. I knew it was too nice to be run by a guy like him, Naruto said while pointing a thumb at Yoru, who just growled at the boy. The old man then chuckled at Yoru's reaction. Yes, that is correct, I am the owner. My name is Koha Gekani. Note that all names are backwards, so his first name is Gekani. Uzumaki Naruto, pleased to meet you, Naruto said, but then noticed Gekani looking him up and down. Is there a problem? Naruto asked. No, I was just wondering how a genin found out about this place, that's all, he said. Trust me, I'm stronger than I look, Naruto replied, but cutting to the chase, I need to make a special order for a custom piece of clothing. When Gekani motioned for him to follow, Naruto complied and allowed himself to be allowed into a room in the back of the store, but not before giving Yoru the finger. The large man then gritted his teeth as he watched the boy fade away into the back room. Oh, I am so going to hurt that little runt, he said. I wouldn't try anything, said a voice right next to him. Yoru turned to see an Umbu with a modified tiger mask. He jumped back a little out of surprise. How long were you standing there? Yoru asked, slightly afraid. That doesn't matter, but anyway, I just wanted to tell you not to try anything with that kid. He's more powerful than you can imagine, and by the looks of it he'll get stronger. So you better show him some respect because he's going to be coming here a lot more, that's for sure. And don't think that you can surprise him either. Any plans that you have right now for fighting him should be abandoned, for your sake anyway. Yoru then looked at door where Naruto had walked through with Gekani. He doesn't seem that strong, he said, but when he got no answer he turned his head and saw nobody there. He hated it when Umbu members did that to him. Meanwhile with Naruto, he was led into a room full of different fabrics and material. So what would this custom order be, Uzumaki-san? He said with a smile. That was something he wasn't used to, a smile. Most people who knew who he was either frowned or glared at him, much like Yoru had. It made Naruto wonder whether or not Gekani was aware of his status. But judging by the man's elderly appearance, it was obvious that the man knew. He must have just been that much of an accepting person. Oh, I've tinkering with this idea for a while, so I already have what it should look like. He pulled out a folded piece of paper and handed it to Gekani. The man unfolded it, and his brow rose. Oh, and I want it to be made out of the same material as this, he said, taking off his orange, blue and white jacket. Interesting idea. I'll see what I can do. Thanks, but listen, I have to go. Can you have it done by the end of today? The old man nodded. Good, I'll be leaving then, Naruto said as he walked out of the room and after giving Yoru one final glare, walked out of the store. Yeah, I'll come back here for sure. At the academy, after a nice breakfast, both Sanai and Kono were filled and ready to complete the rest of the day. Back in the Ichiraka district they got distracted by the sounds of their hunger. However, now they were satisfied and they were replete. Now they were ready to interrogate Naruto. However, the problem was that there was no Naruto. They walked into the classroom ready to interrogate their blonde friend, but they soon found out that he was nowhere in sight. Now they were stuck with Iruka and his horribly dry speech about moving on in the world. For almost 15 minutes they had been listening to Iruka go on and on about how he would miss us and how they would be moving on into the ninja world. They never really realized it, but Iruka knew how to bore crap out of a person. Kono leaned forward and whispered in her sister's ear. "Hey, where do you think Naruto is?" she asked her. "I don't know, but he better come soon. It sounds like Iruka is about to finish. I hope he doesn't miss the team announcements," Sanai said. "So in conclusion, what I'm trying to say is that I'm very proud of all of you, and that I am very proud to announce which genin teams will be assigned to which jonin." Iruka's voice cut through their conversation, causing both sisters to lock their eyes on the man. "All right, without further ado," Iruka began, but his voice was cut off this time by a loud bang coming from the entrance to the classroom. Everyone turned their heads to see Naruto standing at the door. However, there was something missing, specifically a particular piece of clothing. Naruto stood at the door wearing a black t-shirt with an orange swirl on the back instead of his normal orange and blue jacket. "Oh, glad that you could join us, Mr. Uzumaki. You're about 15 minutes late, but you're lucky. I was just about to announce the teams. Hurry up and take your seat." Naruto just sighed and slammed the door shut, and walked toward his seat near Sanai and Kono. Along the way he heard a multitude of whispers, mainly coming from the female portion of the class. He wasn't complaining though, it felt good to get complimented every once in a while. Most people didn't notice it underneath that heavy jacket of his, but he actually had an extremely muscled body. Underneath that padded fabric he was a brick house, and given how small his shirt was, his well-toned body could practically be seen from a mile away. The thin material did nothing but accentuate his body structure, and apparently that was a good thing, judging by the positive reaction of the girls in the class. "My bad for being late, Iruka-sensei. I had some things to take care of," Naruto said cool as he took his seat. "Well, that's okay seeing as how you all are getting new senseis," Iruka said with a smile as Naruto threw a smile back at him. He turned and flashed a smile toward Kono and Sanai. He noticed that their faces were an unusual hot red. Funny he didn't remember their faces this sanguine in the morning. His mind quickly came on to the conclusion that they were blushing and that it was due to his outrageously tight shirt. Then remembered what their mother had mentioned to him earlier in the morning, which caused him to smile to himself. It was time to have a little fun. "Hey, are you guys okay? Your faces look a little red," he whispered as he placed his palms on both their foreheads. At the touch of his hands they both squeaked and flinched. "I hope you guys aren't getting sick or something. It would suck if you girls both caught a fever, wouldn't it?" Both girls just slowly nodded with their mouths open while staring directly at Naruto. "Well, I hope it's nothing serious," he said as he turned fully around and faced Iruka. "That should keep them occupied for a while," Naruto thought to himself. Meanwhile Sanai and Kono had no clue what just happened to them. Of course they knew what Naruto had done, but they didn't know why they reacted like that. Both girls were in a daze and everything else outside of their minds had been tuned out except for Naruto. Kono looked at Sanai and noticed that her sister's face was about as red as a tomato. Her own expression matched Sanai's as well, which was confusing. She had been closer to Naruto before today, but for some reason when he touched her head she felt something different about him, something powerful and seductive. She knew that there was something different about Naruto. She could tell by the way he walked and talked, but she never figured that she would like it this much. Her own reaction to the blonde's noticeable change in aura had surprised her, and she didn't doubt that her sister was feeling the same way. Since when did Naruto become so different, she thought to herself. There was no change in outward appearance, but for those who knew Naruto, it was apparent that he had made a definite inner transition. Kono made a quick glance at the back at Naruto's head but shut it away, for she could just sense the power radiating off of him. Sanai, just like her sister, was in a state of inner confusion as well. It's strange, but when Naruto touched her, she felt her skin tingle. It was like some weird sensation running through her body, all hot and prickly, and it spread like wildfire. Unlike Kono, Sanai had first noticed Naruto's physical appearance, not his change in aura. She had never really noticed it, but underneath that bulky orange jumpsuit, Naruto was as solid as a rock. Wow, since when was Naruto so ripped? Blood rushed to her cheeks and she found herself staring at him, but quickly turned away in fear of somebody catching her. Now wasn't the time to be staring though. As to why she was even staring, Sanai didn't want to admit anything to herself. She needed to be focused and alert. Just then Irika's voice drew her attention back toward the front of the classroom. Every now and then she glanced at Naruto and saw that he wasn't paying attention. Instead he was looking out the window. Normally she would have scolded him and told him to pay attention, but due to very appealing circumstance next to her, Sanai wasn't so sure how her words would come out if she were to try and speak to him. It was better for her to stay silent. As you all know, you will all be assigned to new teams, and along with that new Jonin senseis. The teams will be composed of 3 members. I will now announce the names of each of those teams. As Irika began announcing the teams, Naruto did well not paying attention. Normally he would have in a situation like this, but as of now he really didn't care who was on his team as long as it was not a fangirl. He wouldn't even mind having Kono and Sanai on his team either, and apparently they really didn't mind having him for a teammate. No matter who was on his team, he would still get to use his power, so as of now he wasn't all that interested. Irika went through many names, announcing the pairings and then going on to announce which Jonin they were assigned to. Some people were happy and others sad, some were gloomy and others mad. But to Naruto it did not matter. As long as he gets stuck with someone who wasn't completely incompetent, then he was alright. It had been 3 minutes and Irika had gone through about 6 teams, and was just about to announce the next team. Alright, Team 7 Harino Sakura Uchiha Sasuke. The pink-haired girl let out a squeal of glee and flashed a victory sign to all of Sasuke's other suitors, letting them know that she had won. Ehem, as I was saying, Harino Sakura, Uchiha Sasuke and Inuzuka Kiba. Sakura then let out a low grumble upon hearing dog user's name. Your Jonin instructor will be Hatake Kakashi. Teammate Hyuga Hinata, Aburame Shino and Uzumaki Naruto. Hinata's head instantly sprung up hearing the name of her blonde crush being mentioned along with hers. Naruto himself just glanced at her, making her look away. He then looked at Shino, to which the boy then looked back at him. The bug user's eyebrows shot up and hovered above his ever-present black sunglasses. Naruto looked away and shuddered. Man, that kid was weird, but whoever said that weird wasn't good? Naruto himself was weird, although he always labeled himself as unique. Guess one could say that Shino was odd in some ways but acceptable. Overall it was a decent team. They were a bit interesting, and he wanted to see how well a Hyuga could collaborate with an Aburame. 2 diverging styles of combat meant that in order to make an efficient team they would have to work together like the gears in a clock, and that meant perfect synchronization. Your Jonin instructor will be Yuhi Kurenai. Seeing as how there still is a Team 9, I'm going to skip on to the next team. Team 10, Yamanaka Ino, Nara Shikamaru, and Akimichi Choji. Your Jonin will be Sarutobi Asuma. Then Irika took one final look at the paper in his hand and scratched his head. Oh? It seems like we had an odd number of students graduate this year. There are still 2 left over. The Fumina sisters, while lucky. Looks like you 2 will be paired together on Team 11 and your Jonin will be Mitarashi Enko. Naruto glanced back at the Fumina sisters. Both their expressions were downcast. Just by hearing the name Mitarashi Enko they had both been thrown into a lugubrious mood. Sorry guys, tough luck. He whispered to them and turned back. Most likely that didn't even help. It probably exacerbated the situation. But then again, when did teasing ever help a situation? This rarely happens after graduation, Irika continued. But don't worry, we will find a 3rd teammate for your team. Anyway, now that you all know your teams, and Jonin instructors, all you have to do is wait. They will be here soon, so sit tight and be patient by now, Irika said as he made a hand sign and disappeared in a puff of smoke. That was weird. Irika seemed like he was in a rush to go somewhere. And judging by the tone of his voice, the situation was urgent. Naruto made a mental note of that. Also he noticed that Mizuki was gone as well. The man hadn't even bothered to show up for class. Well, as of now it didn't matter that much to Naruto. He just wanted to meet his Jonin. If he remembered correctly, he was assigned to Yuhi Kurenai, the Genjutsu specialist, well, more like master. Once before, while going through private shinobi files in Aji-san's office, he had come across her file. From what he read, his instructor was extremely skilled in Genjutsu, and apparently possessed the knowledge of over 1,000 Genjutsu. She was the Hatake Kakashi of optical illusions. In the future she would prove to be an entertaining sensei, although not as entertaining as the Hokage himself. After 30 minutes of silence between him, Kono and Sanai, mostly everyone else had been picked up by their Jonin instructors. Now the only people in the room were Sanai, Kono, and the members of Team 8 and 7. The atmosphere was thick and silence permeated the air. Every time Naruto glanced at Kono or Sanai, he noticed their downcast expressions. Either they were sad about not being teammates with him, or their darkened expressions were caused by the knowledge of who their Jonin sensei was. Naruto knew who Mitarashi Anko was, and by the rumors surrounding her, he couldn't blame the two brunettes for adopting such perturbed looks, but he didn't let it pressure him too much. Their temperance was, in itself, a good distraction for them, and would give him a chance to move away before they started to annoy him in order to make themselves feel better. Naruto's eyes darted from the two sisters, then on to Team 7, and then on to his own team, who were seated across the room. He stood up and walked over to him while eyeing the Aburame boy with much focus, not even breaking his concentration to so much as take his gaze off the aloof Genin. "Hey, Shino, can I ask you something?" he said, taking a seat on the desk next to Shino. From behind his high gray-colored collar, the Aburame boy nodded slowly. His thin-rimmed black glasses seemed to be glued to his face, for they did not move an inch when he moved his head. "What is it? I presume that you have come to me in order to discuss the topic of our Jonin-sensei." Shino's eyebrows shot up above his dark specs, correct? The boy was awfully perceptive, but Naruto had expected as much from a person from the Aburame clan. He did not look at Naruto, only away, as if he was avoiding the blonde's eyes. "Wow, you hit the nail right on the head. Didn't expect you to answer before I had a chance to ask. But getting to the point, you do know of our sensei, correct?" "Yes, in fact I've heard a multitude of stories about her skill, particularly her mastery in the art of genjutsu," Shino replied in a neutral tone. He brought his hand up and adjusted his glasses. "Why, are you expecting anything of her?" There he went again, predicting what he was about to say before he even said it. "Actually yes, I am, and I am also expecting out of you and Hinata as well." This caused the usually distant boy to show some interest. He turned his full gaze onto Naruto, apparently drawn fully into the conversation by subtle alacrity, and uttered one word: "Elaborate." "Don't read too much into it. All that is meant is that I can see that you along with Hinata have skills that will prove to be both valuable and irreplaceable in the future. So to curtail, I'm glad to have you on our team," Naruto said nonchalantly. "Your words are much appreciated. I myself am satisfied with you and Hinata as my teammates as well," Shino said. Naruto figured that he could get along with Shino. As stoic and shadowy as the boy was, he was still just that, a boy. And no boy, no matter how odd they may seem, could be completely unsociable. Naruto then took that thought back as the image of a certain Uchiha flashed in his mind. Naruto really hadn't expected Shino to open up so easily, however, but it didn't matter at the time, as long as he had lightened up the mood with his teammate. As he had made a slight connection with one teammate, he was pleased. However, one remained, and there she was timidly walking up to both him and Shino. Hinata slowly crept up to the two boys. Naruto today for some reason had changed. He seemed more confident than he was the day before. It reminded her of the day she first met him, when he had stood up to her father. Although she only had a brief conversation with him that day, he said something to her that she would remember for many years to come in the future. The words he said she still remembered. "But you just got to know how to speak to them." His words still rang in her mind, a constant reminder of why she admired him so much. His confidence, his demeanor and his charisma, they had all returned back to their former glory just like on that day. His character wasn't just what she admired as well, shallow as it may be. His physical features had become her daily eye candy. Most of the time she would stare at him for what seemed to her like hours, although it was only a period of time abundant in brevity. But her infatuation with Naruto was nothing whimsical. At times Hinata herself contemplated on whether or not her attraction to Naruto was just mere infatuation. To her it felt like more than some schoolgirl crush. It wasn't like the attraction that some of the females in her class had with Uchiha Sasuke. It was more than that. She just knew, and hopefully she hoped that one day Naruto too would one day feel the same way towards her. But until then, idle fraternization, she would have to settle for. "Ayano, I was wondering," she began in her usual low tone. Her voice, however, was cut off by the dry grind of the door opening to reveal a black-haired woman standing in its rectangular frame. She wore a white and red dress that stopped at the high point of her thighs, was very beautiful. The most outstanding feature about her was her piercing red eyes, that almost seemed to bore into a person. She opened her mouth and said, "Teammate, meet me in training ground 19 in 10 minutes, before disappearing in a cloud of smoke. "Well, I guess that was Kurenai, she seems interesting," Naruto said before getting up to leave. He gave Sanai and Kono one final wave. However, they did not respond, for they were lost in deep emotional adversity. He went against any decisions to solace them, and just went on his way. Shino stood as well and walked out as well, with Hinata slowly following behind. "Indeed, she is an interesting one," the bug user said as he followed Naruto to the roof. On the training field. Kurenai didn't waste any time getting to the training field. Although she didn't show it in the class before, she was actually excited about getting herself a team. Given that she had never been assigned a team before, she felt as though she could handle this team correctly. It seemed to her that she had actually gotten lucky. But for now she would test them. She had purposely given them a period of 10 minutes to get to training ground 19. She knew that it would take more than just 10 minutes for a genin to get there, most likely closer to 20 minutes. She just wanted to assess their speed before she got started. Underneath a large tree, she sat, enjoying the brief moment of peace before her team came here. The leaves loomed over her entire being, casting a cool shadow that saved her from the heat of the sun. The feeling it brought flowed throughout her body, giving her otherwise dry skin a break, and it allowed her to think clearly. Who did she have? Let's see, there was that Aburaim. His clan's techniques utilized bugs to their every advantage, although a very distant clan in Konoha. Their prowess was well noted throughout the village. Some ways recognized their power better than others. She had only gotten to see an Aburaim in battle a handful of times, but what she saw when they did was always surprising and in some ways disturbing. He would prove to be a beneficial asset to her team. Then there was Hyuga Hinata, the daughter of the current Hyuga clan head, Hyuga Hayashi, and next in line to take the position of leadership. Kurenai herself had interacted with her many times in the past. She was a timid little thing. She had much potential, and although she used her family's gentle fist style of fighting diffidently, she showed much promise. If only her self-esteem issue would stop getting in her way, she might actually be able to improve herself, but it wasn't her fault. Kurenai blamed her father for the way Hinata turned out. His coldness and harsh actions toward his daughter turned her into the shy girl she was now. She thought of herself as a failure, and what was worse was that her father agreed with her. The thought of it sickened her, and she knew that Hinata's confidence was something that she had to work on with the girl. Lastly, there was the Uzumaki, Kyuubi's jailer. She didn't know what to think of this boy actually. She was never one of those ignorant villagers who thought of Naruto as the Kyuubi himself. Never would she stoop to such a low mindset. But she couldn't help but feel that he was hiding something. Whether or not he even knew of the Kyuubi's existence was still unknown. He seemed strong, however. Would he be able to work with the other two on his team? Many rumors surrounded the boy, some saying that he was hiding his true power, and that he was a ruthless fighter. That one's a mystery, she said to herself. Which one's a mystery? Said a voice. Kurenai's eyes widened when she looked up and saw Naruto standing upside down on a branch. He had a jaunty expression plastered on his face. For a moment the wind blew and Kurenai said nothing. Well, he said, raising a brow. Kurenai just sat surprised. There should have been no way that he could have gotten there so quickly. She herself had gotten there in little under 2 minutes, so for him to get there and approach her without her noticing was unnatural for a child his age. Why you? How did you get here so fast? She asked. That doesn't matter right now. I have someone who's here and wants to speak to you. Who could possibly dash? She cut herself off when she noticed an Umbu with a slightly modified tiger mask walk from behind the tree. What the hell is this? She asked. Kurenai-sensei, this is Yuji Saito, my future Umbu captain. Kurenai almost stopped thinking for a moment. The fact that he just Umbu meant that he was stronger than he let on, most maybe even stronger than she was. The concept of being weaker than a genin was a bit surprising. In fact, it was mind-boggling. There should have been no way that this boy could possibly attain Umbu rank. Still, Kurenai sat and said nothing, dumbfounded by what might actually be reality. I had expected a reaction like that. There should still be more than 15 minutes before everyone else gets here, so you should use the time wisely and listen to Saito here has to say. Kurenai just nodded with her lower lip hanging off like she was an idiot. Saito then took over from there, promptly informing Kurenai of Naruto's situation and how he was to become an Umbu by next year. He told her of how Naruto would be training with them a lot in order to gain some experience before he was fully placed in his squad. The entire time Kurenai was silent, looking away from Saito only to glance at Naruto, who had taken to cleaning out his ears. After he finished speaking, Kurenai only nodded. Well, I'm glad that you understand your student's position. I guess that I'm done here. He then glanced up at Naruto. And I'll be expecting you afterward. Yeah, Naruto said, not even bothering to look at his captain, completely focused on excavating the cave that he called his ear. With that, Saito bowed and walked behind the tree. When Kurenai looked to see if he was still there, her eyes widened, for he was gone. How do they do that? Naruto said, finishing her question for her. Yeah, I'm still trying to figure that one out for myself. Kurenai eyed the boy carefully. It was true, she had gotten lucky. Who would have thought on her first genin team she would have a genin stronger than herself? But that only led to her feeling a bit off edge and insecure about her own ability. Naruto, she said. Yeah, what is it, Kurenai-sensei? He replied. It was a surprise that he still addressed her as his sensei, since he clearly outranked her when it came to skill. However, she swallowed whatever injured pride that may have attempted to show its head and asked him a question. What is it that you did to get so strong? Oh, that, it wasn't really just me, I got some help from our Hokage. That shocked Kurenai. And what do you mean by that? I mean, I was trained by him. Now Kurenai was intrigued. If he was brought under the eye of the Hokage, then who knows what type of techniques he had hidden in those rather tight sleeves of his. She would have to make sure to tell him to get some different clothing. If not, then he had better be prepared to run from a couple dozen girls every day. Since I was 7 years old, he trained me, taught me everything I know. And yet I still don't know how the Umbu do that vanishing thing. Interesting. Well, you can tell me more later. Because I think that your teammates have finally arrived, and a bit earlier than I expected. Shino was tired, to say the least. He had actually pushed himself to make that 10-minute mark, whatever his sensei was trying to achieve by making him and Hinata rush to such a far-away training ground. He had no clue. Behind him a badly winded Hinata followed, dragging her feet against the dusky ground. Shino, isn't that and Naruto sitting next to Kurenai-sensei? Shino, who had been looking at the ground the entire time, paused and looked up. Indeed, was Naruto sitting next to their sensei, staring into the sky as if he had been there for a long time and was bored. The boy's finely tuned intellect caused his mind to race to the one question that sprung up. How did he get here so quickly? He said between breaths. I don't know, he must be really fast, Hinata muttered. As the both of them approached the large tree, Kurenai motioned for them to come over. Well, you two look tired. Did you have a hard time getting here? Kurenai asked. A small but noticeable vein popped up on Shino's head. Hardly, I would just rather take my time. Kurenai then giggled. Oh, then why are you breathing so hard? I'd rather not speak about it, Shino said as he hid away beneath his large collar. Naruto let out a loud chuckle and Hinata herself suppressed a chuckle, although it was rather hard to laugh when you were as tired as she was. As Kurenai looked her team up and down, she smiled warmly. It seems as if she had gotten really lucky this first time. A Hyuga, an Aburame, and the ever-present mystery that was her most interesting pupil, Uzumaki Naruto. Yep, she had gotten really lucky. As of now, Yuhi Kurenai was very pleased. The awaiting looks on the faces of her students' faces brought a smile to the red-eyed beauty's lips. Overlooking her 3 students, she folded her arms, half her face covered by the shade of the tree behind her. Hinata, who was standing directly parallel to Kurenai, had raised an eyebrow. Up until now she hadn't noticed it, but when shrouded by the deep shade it was apparent that Kurenai's piercing eyes were so intimidating because they actually glowed. Behind the shadows 2 small scarlet-red pupils glowed, completely locked onto her and taking on the likeness of fire. It was beginning to bother Hinata. Looking at Kurenai's eyes reminded her of how her father looked at her, but even though their stares bore such an uncanny resemblance, she knew that Kurenai's was a stare of compassion. Still, it did not hurt to point it out. Ayano, Kurenai-sensei, Hinata said, slightly raising her hand. Yes, your eyes, they're glowing. She said hesitantly. Yeah, I was kind of wondering about that as well, why they are like that. Naruto added in, jamming his hands into his pockets. I would also like to know the reason behind your eyes, if it is not too much trouble, Shino stated. Oh, these, Kurenai said with a slight giggle. She closed her eyes for a slight second, and then when she reopened them the ghastly glow of her irises had disappeared. These are not real. It's actually just a small genjutsu I placed over them. I developed it when I was younger. Whenever too many males would fawn over me I used it to scare them away. I guess I had just gotten so accustomed to using it that it has become more like a reflex to just activate whenever I'm in public. Perhaps I should teach it to you, she said, aiming her finger at Hinata. You could use it a lot. Hinata simply blushed and shook her head, looking down as she caught on to what her new sensei was insinuating, that she was pretty. Oh no, I don't think I would need it, Hinata said shyly. She cast a quick glance at Naruto, who did not seem to notice her embarrassment, seemingly oblivious. For Kurenai to say such embarrassing things while around Naruto was a bit too much for Hinata to suppress at the moment. A breeze rustled the leaves of the trees and the low howl of wind filled the air. All right, no more idle conversation, Kurenai stated abruptly. Her voice brought Hinata's face back up. Time for everyone to introduce themselves. Shino interrupted by raising his hand halfway past his waist. Excuse me, sensei. Would introductions not prove to be useless? If I am correct, we all know each other. Very good, Shino-kun, she responded while giving the Aburame boy a pat on his head, much to his annoyance. While you do know each other, I do not know each of you. When I say introduce, I don't just mean your names. I want you to show me just exactly who you are when it comes to skill level. So exactly what do you have in mind? Shino said, a dark eyebrow appearing over the rim of glasses. Well, first we'll start off with a light spar. Kurenai responded. That is not a bad proposal, sensei. I agree to it, as I am curious to test out the skill of my 2 teammates. Kurenai smirked. Well, the boy certainly wasn't discreet about things, surprising for one who was usually so distant. Shino turned to Naruto, aiming his black glasses at the blonde. If Kurenai's ears were correct, she could have sworn that she heard a low buzz emanate from underneath the folds of Shino's jacket. First off, there was what Naruto had said to him that had gotten him so riled up to spar. Naruto had said that he was expecting of him and Hinata. Well, at the moment Shino was eager to show him just what was to be expected. Secondly, if Naruto was able to get to the training field before he and Hinata were not even break a sweat, then what were his skills in battle like? He had already established that Naruto was faster than both he and Hinata were. The only question, was he stronger than they were? To the untrained eye, things like a mere sentence, and simply beating a person to a predetermined destination were things that stuck out like a sore thumb. But Shino wasn't boisterous, his eyes weren't that sharp. However, these things did not escape the observant mind, and Shino's mind was the basic meaning of the word observant. Shino's concentration on his new teammate was broken when he felt Kurenai's hand hit his shoulder. Why don't you spar with Hinata first, and I'll spar with Naruto? Oh, that was great. Was Kurenai a mind reader or something? Leave it to the trained eye of a Jonin to actually see past his Aburame mask and deduce that he wanted to fight Naruto. I agreed, sensei, Shino said, turning his gaze to Hinata. Naruto then smiled, knowing exactly what his sensei was trying to do. She was in fact attempting to gauge his skill level. In a very straightforward and subtle way, Kurenai was telling Naruto that she wanted to fight him. That's fine with me, Naruto said, waving his hand. I need a workout. Those are very confident words, Naruto, Shino muttered. It would be in your best interest to remember that Kurenai-sensei is in fact Jonin. Yeah, I'm fully aware, Naruto replied, not bothering to glance at Shino. It's time to show them what I can do. Pain shot through Kurenai's back as she was shot back into the thick trunk of a tree. Dropping to her knees, she let out a heavy breath, her gaze aimed at the ground. A bead of sweat dripped off her forehead, hitting the ground just as it was darkened by a shadow. Kurenai looked up to see Naruto above her with his leg extended above his head. His bored expression turned sideways when Kurenai rolled to the side, barely avoiding Naruto's heel before it made contact with her face. As she got up, she was forced to duck a roundhouse. The force of Naruto's kick sent her long hair swaying to the side. As soon as she stood, she was thrown back into the defensive, blocking a mass of punches and kicks aimed at her head and torso. Seriously, who knew that Uzumaki Naruto would be this strong? She had been sparring with the kid for about an hour, and within the first 20 minutes it had already become apparent that he was much more skilled than she was when it came to taijutsu. Striking like a snake, the flat of Naruto's sandal smacked against her arm as she blocked another kick. He wasn't done, however. Spinning around, Naruto slid his foot back onto the ground and aimed a backhand at her face. She ducked and, utilizing her low crouched position, hopped up, almost catching Naruto's chin with high upward kick. Her foot came back down with force, cutting through the air like a blade, and crashed down onto Naruto's shoulder. He took the force of the blow, his legs bending, but he soon countered by stepping in, thus throwing her off balance and blasting her back again with an open palm strike. Damn it, he's one strong genin, Kurenai thought as she flipped and landed on her feet. That last attack had hurt. If she had to be honest with herself, she would have said that he might have cracked something. However, she had no time to think about her minor injuries. Naruto was coming in again. Naruto flew, hopping a bit, and aiming a well-placed knee at the center of her chest. Kurenai caught it, and twisted so that he would lose his balance. Her plan worked for the most part. Bringing his other leg forward, Naruto brought Kurenai's head to the ground with a quick kick, and she tasted dirt. That was it, she had enough of that. Yuhi Kurenai had been knocked down for the last time. She pushed herself up and rolled away from Naruto, who was on the ground as well. This was her chance. She quickly stood up and kicked the boy in his ribs. He barely blocked in time, but that still did not matter. With her upward kick, Naruto's body rose in the air, carried by Kurenai's leg. He let out a small grunt, and was tossed backward as Kurenai stepped and struck with an open palm. Just as Hinata's attention was drawn to the battle between Naruto and Kurenai, the blonde had hit the ground. Naruto. For the most part, Hinata had not seen the spar between her crush and sensei. Her attention was centered fully on Shino, whose taijutsu to her surprise was better than what she had expected. He blocked most of her strikes, only slipping a few times when she managed to land a hit on him. It was after 5 minutes into their spar that she noticed that Shino was distracted. He kept looking off to the side, turning his head as she aimed a Juken strike, and every time his eyes were looking toward Naruto and Kurenai-sensei's spar. It was odd for an Aburame to seem distracted. They never got distracted. Shino moved in. Hinata dodged his strike, his arm flying past her ear. Hinata. Huh, Was Shino whispering to her? More importantly, was Shino whispering something to her in the middle of their spar? The sunlight hit his glasses, causing them to coruscate, shining bright light into her eyes, forcing her to close them. "Hinata, look at Naruto." Suddenly, opening her eyes, Hinata blinked rapidly. Shino was still in front of her, however. His arm had fallen back to his side and he was standing straight with his hands in his pockets. What do you mean?" Hinata asked. A thin layer of sweat laced her skin and her question was asked between heavy breaths. "Look at how he's fighting, he's matching Kurenai punch for punch. That shouldn't be right." Back at the academy, Naruto only demonstrated that he had a basic grasp of the academy-style taijutsu. Now, he's fighting on what looks like par with Kurenai-sensei, and look at his movements. Those are academy-taught moves. He's using a completely different technique. Shino was right, Naruto's movements were drastically different from what she had seen in the academy. His strikes were quicker, his reflexes faster as well. It was as if his entire knowledge of taijutsu had completely evolved in the blink of an eye. But how was this possible? Shino was, as ashamed as he was to say it, flummoxed, confused. Was Naruto hiding something that allowed him to gain this strength? A small tingle of relief entered Shino. He soon realized that if it had been him to fight Naruto from the beginning, he would have clearly been overtaken. "Okay, let's stop," Kurenai said, and she let out a tired sigh. Her face was covered in bruises from hitting the ground so many times. Naruto, on the other hand, had little but a scratch on his entire body. Hinata and Shino had both stopped sparring. They stood silently in the middle of the clearing, as if struck by awe. Although, given the display of skill that Naruto had just shown, Kurenai would not be surprised if they were both surprised. With two waves of her arm, Kurenai called to two over. She then turned back to Naruto. "Naruto, let me ask you a question." The blonde raised an eyebrow. "Fire away," he responded nonchalantly. Kurenai nodded. It was obvious that Naruto was in no way fatigued by that light spar. Kurenai's breathing, on the other hand, was a little bit more than heavy. By this time it was obvious that Naruto could outclass her when it came to physical combat. His attacks were too swift, his strikes too strong, but as strong as he may have been, Kurenai was still sure that she held her superiority over him when it came to the more mysterious techniques of the shinobi. "While we were sparring, you showed no attempt to hide your prowess from Shino and Hinata. Tell me, are you comfortable with having your skill exposed?" Naruto smiled. He was hoping that someone would ask that question. "Actually, I'm quite fine with letting people see my power now that I have permission from our Hokage." "Excuse me? Before I became an official nin of the village, when I began my training with the Sandaime, I had to make a promise. A vow saying that I was not to show my true strength, unless I was given permission specifically from the Hokage himself." Naruto then chuckled. "And just yesterday I was given the okay to show what I could do, and as you have already seen, I'm perfectly comfortable with people seeing my power." Was all that Kurenai said. She would have never guessed that there was a child with this much power hiding right under her nose. And what was so surprising about it was that it was the one person that almost every villager hated with a heated passion, the bane of Konoha, the demon boy. It was strange. She had heard the rumors of how Naruto was treated so badly by the villagers, the many assassination attempts, the seemingly random beatings, the riots supporting his execution. With all of the power that he held, it was a wonder that the boy had not let it go straight to his head. He could have gone mad and slaughtered all those who tried to take his life. But he did not, he simply took it. What was it that kept him mentally intact? During those times when he was getting chased and beaten, he had the power to stop, but instead of taking the easy route and ending it all, he allowed it to happen. Sometimes, she heard, he would go missing and show up weeks later a bloody mess. What was it that he thought about during those life and death situations that helped him control himself and not retaliate? Truly he was a mystery, and now that mystery was her student, and hers to unravel. She would have to make sure that she solved the puzzle that was Uzumaki Naruto. Making his way over with Hinata, the usually taciturn Shino said aloud, "Naruto, may I ask you a quick question?" Naruto mentally sighed. Another question, how fun. "Yeah, what is it, Shino?" Naruto said in a bored tone. The Aburame pointed his finger at Kurenai, who adopted a confused expression. It seemed as if his previous suspicion about Naruto was true. Now was his chance to confirm it. For a quick second Shino abandoned his habitually low tone of voice and said out loud, "Can you tell me why Kurenai-sensei has seemingly taken more damage during that spar than you did? You are but a genin like Hinata and myself, correct?" Naruto nodded. "Then why is it that you can best a jonin in combat? Back at the academy your skills were nowhere near as polished as they are now. It should be impossible for you, at your estimated skill level, to beat Kurenai-sensei in a match, even if it was a light spar." I also have noticed that while you're stronger than you were a couple of days ago, Hinata added in. Naruto noticed that her gaze hung low toward the ground. Should it not be obvious, Shino? Kurenai gave him a look but he ignored it. I'm stronger than I let on before. I'm surprised that you did not see it before. For an Aburame, you sure are a bit unobservant. That was a low blow. There was no way that Shino would take sitting down. That was a major shock to his Aburame pride. Don't fool yourself, Naruto. I came to the conclusion that you were hiding something a long time ago. I simply wanted you to confirm it. Really? Naruto said smugly. Yes, but just to be sure that you are not blowing up your own power. He paused. Would you allow me to spar with you? That's fine with me. Naruto said. He could use another warm-up. Kurenai sighed. Boy, this will be quick. What the hell are those things? Sanai asked as she hid behind a tree for cover. She clenched her teeth when she felt the tree budge hard, as if something large had stuck it. Where the hell was Kono? She couldn't do this by herself. Right off the bat, Sanai had deduced that Anko was insane. As soon as they had reached their training ground, well, if the Forest of Death could even be called a training ground. Honestly, what type of sensei brings her first two pupils to the most dangerous location in the entire village? Apparently Mitarashi Anko, taking a deep breath before hopping onto a branch above her, avoiding another attack by those bizarre snakes that seemed to just live in Anko's sleeves. She heard the crack of a branch being ripped apart just as she hit the thick brown branch above her. She remembered her first impression of her sensei. That happy-go-lucky facial expression was so disarming. At first she thought, oh, this lady doesn't look too bad. Well, it didn't please her to know that she was wrong. Upon meeting them both, Anko had told them to follow her to their training ground. When she asked where the training ground was, all Anko did was tell her not to worry about it. It'll be fun, Anko said. Well, some fun. So much for having a nice, laid-back sensei who would let them train at their own pace. For the past hour, Anko had been training them into the ground. From her position on the branch, Sanai glanced at the ground of the forest floor. It was dark and covered in greenery. Small cylindrical rays of light pierced the dense canopy, bringing in minimum light onto the floor. Scanning the ground behind her, Sanai's eyes narrowed. Was that a sound? A rustle of leaves, perhaps? Directly underneath her, a large fern was moving a bit oddly, even against the light breeze of the forest. Her eyes narrowed as another sound penetrated the silence of the forest, and she peered into a dark patch of shadow created by the many bushes. Hisses. Oh damn! She knew what that sound meant. Her thoughts were confirmed when a pair of golden, slitted eyes opened with an audible click and the pick maw of a brown and black striped snake came rushing at her. Later, as expected, Anko's arm came rising out of the bush, and she poked her head out, smiling. You better dodge or you'll die. These snakes are venomous. Venomous! Sanai yelled in surprise. That wasn't good. There was a deadly snake heading her way. She was exhausted, and her sister was nowhere to be found. Yay, what fun! As the hiss grew loud, Sanai prepared her legs to jump out of the way. That would be the plan if she wasn't so tired. She let out a squeal as the gleaming fangs of the snake approached. Don't worry, I've got you covered. Then there was a flash of blue and black, and before Sanai knew it, her sister, Kono, was in the air with her foot connected to the head of the rather vicious snake. The reptile let out a loud hiss of pain as Kono kicked it back at its owner, who by the way wasn't there anymore. Kono, watch out! Sanai yelled, witnessing her sensei appear behind her sister. With renewed energy, Sanai pumped chakra into her legs, springing off of the tree branch and down at Anko with as much speed as she could muster up. The snake, still attached to Anko's arm, swung back up and caught Sanai in midair. She struggled, but it was of no use. Now Anko was able to concentrate on Kono. She grabbed her by the back of her shirt and hung her in the air. She turned and with a small grunt Anko flung Kono, causing the girl to go into a series of back flips until she smacked her back against the trunk of a tree. Sticking to the trunk like gum, Kono glanced at her sensei's face. Was she smiling? Oh, now she got it. This was like playtime for her. Kono let out a low groan, a tiny, almost indiscernible murmur before the world went black and she fell onto a wide branch directly underneath her. Kono! Sanai said, but she was cut off mid-sentence when she found herself being caught by gravity. The odd sensation of falling filled her stomach. The ground came closer, rushing to meet her and Anko. Anko landed on her feet, a feather falling from the sky. Sanai, on the other hand, had a landing a bit less than comfortable. As soon as Anko hit the ground, Sanai was released by her sensei's weapon and thrown to the ground, from which she landed on her butt and rolled backwards until she lay flat on her stomach. Ow, that hurt, Sanai yelled. A lot, she finished off lamely while rubbing her bottom. She squeaked when a pair of feet with shin guards crashed down in front of her. You fail! Anko's harsh voice caused Sanai to cover her ears. It was such a simple task and you both failed, she said loudly. The body of Anko's snake then retracted back into the sleeve of her trench coat. What do you mean by simple? Sanai asked, sitting up, the look on her sensei's face fierce, like the snake she previously controlled. Why, you were chucking snakes at us, Anko squatted, bringing her face closer to Sanai's. And so what if you still failed? All I said was that you two were to work together and retrieve the dango stick from me. I never said that I would let you take it so easily. You failed and that's that. You did not retrieve this stick from my dash. Anko brought her hand up to the spiky bun of hair atop her head in which she had stuck the dango stick through, and her eyes widened. Head? Feeling around a bit more, her eyes widened as she noticed the absence of a certain small piece of wood. The dango stick was gone. No, this was all wrong. She could have sworn that she skewered that bun of hair with her dango stick. But where was it? Had it fallen during her descent to the ground? Or maybe while she was kicking her two students' asses? No, it couldn't have fallen. She made sure that she was extra careful when moving so that her dango stick would not fall out. What gives? Where's my stick? She froze when she heard Sanai giggle. Looks like we didn't fail after all. What? With a shaky arm, Sanai pointed up to the branch where her unconscious sister lay. Only half of her body could be seen, as she was barely on the branch. Her arm hung limply off the wood. Swaying back and forth and clutched between her fingers was a long needle-like piece of wood. The dango stick, Anko gasped. When did she? When you threw her into the tree. When you turned in midair and flung her. For a split second she was above your head. That was when she swiped it. We had both agreed that I would act as a diversion while you were coming for one of us and get your attention. And then that was when she would grab it. She coughed, cleared her throat, then continued. But unfortunately, those snakes of yours was a hindrance to us, and in every way possible. It was impeding our plan's progress, but they did help us by giving us an opening. So in other words, when I was grabbed and you flung Kono, you actually gave Kono an opening to grab your dango stick. Right now Anko was a little surprised. She hadn't expected these two to actually get the stick, really. She didn't even expect the two sisters to last as long as they did, let alone pass the challenge. It seems as if they were full of surprises. Oh, she would have fun training these two. Well, I'll be darned, then I guess you both passed, congrats. But for no, how about we stop right now? I think I threw your sister a little too hard. So I'll take her to the hospital. Good, so does that mean that I can sleep? Anko nodded. Thank heavens, Sanai said, letting her head drop and hit the ground pretty hard. You can sleep here. But that doesn't guarantee that I'll come back to get you, and there are some pretty big beasts that live in this forest, It was no good. There was a light snore from Sanai. She had already went to sleep. Wow, she must have been pretty exhausted. Anyway, she looked toward the branch where Kono still hung loosely. Time to get you to the hospital. Shino fell to his knees, releasing a loud groan. His breathing was strained, and then the rim of his collar was darkened, stained by the massive amount of sweat dripping from his face. Well, he had accomplished his goal. He fought with Naruto and, as expected, got his ass handed to him. A shadow cast itself over him, providing him with an aegis against the sun's rays. Looking up, he saw Naruto standing there with an expression of equanimity. Have you had enough? Because if you haven't, I can keep going on, Naruto said. Well, as of now, Shino could do two things. One, he could accept defeat and retire from the spar, or two, he could persevere and keep trying to face Naruto. Not only was Shino perceptive, but he was also smart as well. However, it did not take someone as smart as he to realize that, the way he was now, he didn't stand a chance against the blonde powerhouse. The odds were stacked against him. First of all, he was seriously tired, and secondly, Naruto wasn't. Throughout the entire spar, Naruto hadn't even broken a sweat. Just what the hell was he? Naruto extended his hand out, an end to the match coming to meet Shino. Looks like he would not have to quit. Naruto would end it for him. Taking his hand, Shino pulled himself up, and Naruto, he said between huffs, how did you get so strong? Why do you want to know? Naruto asked. He then shook his hair wildly, a golden lion's mane. It was devoid of any perspiration since he had not dropped a bead of sweat. There was nothing but dry air flying from those unruly locks. It is astounding to me as to how you have acquired so much skill and prowess, and yet you are the same age as I. Tell me, what is it that you did to get to your current level? If you don't mind, yes, I would like to know. I'll tell you that at a different time. Trust me, you'll find out soon enough. Now why don't we go join Kurenai and Hinata? Naruto said with a smile. Fine, Shino said with a slight flutter of breath in his speech. As the two boys walked/limped back to Kurenai and Hinata, Shino's breathing began to hasten. Are you alright? Naruto asked. You're breathing pretty hard. At first there was no response from Shino. Yes, I am fine, I'm just feeling a little lightheaded. Ugh. His words died off as Shino's legs gave way and he dropped to the ground, unconscious. Shino? Kurenai said. Shino-kun. Hinata then followed up. They both ran up to Shino's not-prone body. Naruto had already taken his pulse. Don't worry, he's fine, just exhausted. I guess I hit him on the head a little too hard. Releasing a sigh of relief, Hinata let go of the collar of her jacket. Well, that's good to know. But don't you think that we should still, take him to the hospital? Kurenai stood at his head, looking over him. You're right, that's probably the best course of action right now. That little bump on the head you gave him, Naruto, might actually be something more severe. It would be best if we want to avoid a pejorative situation. After all, we wouldn't want that little bump showing up weeks later during a mission, now would we? Hi! Both Naruto and Hinata responded. Wow, she was surprised that Naruto still treated her like his superior, even though he was stronger than she. That was good though, scrupulous behavior like that would earn him some brownie points. Good, now let's go. Kurenai said as she scooped the Shino into her arms. Catch up you two, okay? Hi! With that she disappeared from sight in a swirl of leaves, a classic exit. Naruto then turned to Hinata. Why was he looking at her like that? Was there something on her face? She stood, eyes wide in anticipation, and she hoped that he would say something to her, because she knew that she certainly wouldn't. Well, let's go, shall we? Naruto said, extending a hand toward her. Hinata paused, feeling her heart skip a beat. A familiar heat resurrected itself in his stomach. Was he honestly expecting her to take his hand? If only he knew what that would do to her. So out of shock, Hinata muttered the only response that her trembling lips could force out. Huh? Come on, we're catching up to Kurenai-sensei. Naruto grabbed Hinata by the hand, turning his head so that he was now pulling her. Hinata let out a loud squeak and his arm dropped, pulled down by some unknown avoirdupois, and it felt like dead weight. When he turned back around, he found Hinata sprawled on the ground unconscious. Her hand was still clutching his despite her being in that state. Sighing, he squatted by her. It seems that she was still the same scared little girl she was when Naruto had first met her. Really, she was just too shy for her own good. With an annoyed expression and an arched eyebrow, Naruto scratched his head. She did not just faint. As much he didn't want to believe it, and as many times he repeated the phrase in his head, the truth was still right there in front of him. She really did just faint. That would not go over well with him. Specifically, it was annoying. I touch her hand and she faints. Great, he said. Hinata, he said, giving her cheeks a few soft slaps to the face. Upon further inspection he saw that her cheeks were hot and florid. 2 light pink patches on her cheeks gave her face an innocent quality. It was milliseconds later that Naruto came upon the empirical conclusion pertaining to what those pink patches were. Is she blushing? Naruto's mind went to work, a supercomputer going through thousands of reasons per second as to why she was blushing. Finally he hit the one that made the most sense. Yeah, I think I'll just come back to that one later, Naruto said, pushing the reason out of his mind. He smacked her once more. Hinata, well, that sucks. With slight grunt, Naruto picked Hinata up and slung her over his back. He leaned forward a bit so that she would not fall and with a burst of speed bounded off toward the hospital. Kurenai sat by the window of a small brightly lit room. The light had almost faded away and at the horizon in the distance a pale purple light seemed to reach toward the sky. The day was almost over. Pretty soon it would be time for her to dismiss her students for the day. She sighed. So much time wasted, we could have done so much more today. Crossing her legs and resting her head on the palm of her hand, Kurenai released yet another sigh. First day and already someone was in the hospital, and it was for something probably minor. Not the normal picture any sensei's perfect first day with their pupils. A susurr sounded, and she heard the sound of faint mumbling beside her. She looked over to Shino, who was in a standard hospital room bed to her right. Naruto had given him a really bad kick to the head back there. The way his head jarred when it was struck should have knocked him out, but Naruto probably held back with that one. Click! Kurenai snapped her head when she heard the door open. What she saw next, what she would never expected. Standing at the now open frame of the door was Naruto with Hinata slung over his shoulder. She should not have been seeing things like this. First Naruto beats Shino down, then next he takes Hinata out. Now, in comes Naruto just waltzing into the hospital with an unconscious Hyuga girl slung over his shoulder. She hoped that he knew how awkward he looked at that moment. What happened to her? Kurenai said. She fainted. Naruto responded nonchalantly. What? Look, I touched her hand and she just flat out lost all consciousness. Don't ask me why. Don't ask me how, just ask her when she wakes up. Naruto placed Hinata down in a chair and gave her another quick glance. Well, that's if she wakes up. He glanced back to Kurenai. So what's his problem? Naruto extended a finger toward Shino's shifting body. The doctor said that it wasn't that serious, just some mild head trauma. Kurenai responded. Well, that's good, at least it wasn't something fatal. Yeah, but on a different note, how did Hinata get like that? Naruto sighed. I grabbed her hand because I wanted to catch up to you quickly, but when I touched her, she simply dropped like a rock. Kurenai raised an eyebrow. Looking at the darkening sky, Naruto took out the small scroll that he was given. What's that? Kurenai asked. Oh, this, casually. He tossed her the scroll and she opened it. A map of Konoha? Yes, but it's a map only used by Tyros coming to the Anbu. If you look closely, you will be able to see that there are small pinpointed locations indicating every and all of the meeting and training locations for Anbu Black Op agents. It was given to me by my captain, the man you met with earlier. I was instructed to meet him at a specific one of those locations as soon as I was finished with my meeting with you, and seeing as how 2 of my comrades are out of commission, I would like your permission to leave. If that's all, then sure, you have my permission. But tell me, were you told what would be occurring at the meeting with your captain? Actually, I was told. He said that I wouldn't just be meeting with him, instead I'd be meeting with my entire team. Well, good luck, Naruto. You know, I still never would have guessed that you Ofal people would be an Anbu. You're pretty amazing, you know. She tossed him back the small black scroll which he put back in his pocket. Naruto made a hand sign before chuckling. Wow, I'm amazing? Never heard that one before, he said before his body faded away, the last of his words dying off as a low echo. It saddened Kurenai to hear her student say something like that. Had he never really been told that he was amazing? She thought that it wasn't the truth and that he was just saying that to be sarcastic, but the sad smile on his face told her otherwise. She thought about his last words, they circled around her head. Never heard that before. His words made her think about how hard of a life he must have had to be able to say something like that, and really mean it. No, she would not allow something like that go on. Vowing in her mind, she would make sure that Naruto would never be able to say things like that ever again. Naruto glided from rooftop to rooftop, flying through the village at Mach speed, brown buildings and green trees in the distance, all rushing past him in an instant. As he continued on further, eventually the browns and blacks faded, giving way to only the greens of trees. He stopped on a branch, harshly making it crack, and with great dexterity slipped out his little black scroll. He smoothly opened it, his head reading from left to right, eyes scanning to paper with robotic perception. He looked south. This way. Naruto rolled the scroll back up and put it back into his pocket. Then he bounded off into the darkness of the forest, leaving a thoroughly tattered branch behind him. The leaves fluttered past his face, brushing against his face. High in the canopy he could smell the stinging scent of damp greenery coming from below. Strangely, on Naruto's perspective, the forest of death was pretty soothing at night, especially when one was flying through the trees like Naruto was at the moment. Even though it had become dark, Naruto's vision was not impaired. He never really understood why his eyes worked the way they did. In the dark he could see just as well as he could in the day, if not better. Most people would need to activate a minor night vision ninjutsu to gain the vision that so easily came to him in the dark. It was one of the few things that he didn't understand about himself, and one of the few things that he did not wish to investigate. There was something in the back of his mind telling him not to go there, to just stay away. Slowly, as he noticed, the trees grew farther apart, until they gave way to a small clearing. In the distance he could see a large creek. His enhanced night vision allowed for him to observe the rushing torrent of water. His eyes then locked onto the one thing that mattered in that dark green clearing of grass and trees. His captain standing in the clearance with his hands behind his back, his tiger mask a pale dusky white. In the shadow, Saito looked somehow ominous, ghost-like, his Anbu vest transparent in the bitter darkness. Naruto sneered this apparition that was his captain. Now he was in friendly territory. The mask could come off. Fully. He landed in front of his captain with nothing but a small rustle in the leaves. He would have landed silently, but he wanted to make sure that he was noticed. Taicho. Naruto said, kneeling down on one leg, bowing his head. Taicho, Naruto, you are addressing me as your captain, yet you are not even an Anbu member yet. Tell me, why is it that you do that? Naruto looked up, his expression solid. I am but a genin and you are an Anbu. I am below you, and due to the certain circumstances that I am placed under, I will be calling you that in the future. So why not practice now? Ah, a scrupulous one you are indeed. You'll make an excellent addition to my squad. Thank you, Naruto responded, standing up. So, I do remember you mentioning that I would come here to meet you and the rest of your team. He looked around, seeing nothing. By the way, where is said team? Cutting to the chase as usual, I see Naruto. Well, if you want to meet the team, then by all means meet the team. Saito followed by allowing his hand to sway in a horizontal arch in front of Naruto's face. Almost an instant later, Naruto felt it. 3 other intense presences all around him. Killing intent as thick as a block of ice, dense and potent. It was not only mentally terrifying but it was also opulent. The horrid sensation came in abundance, all of it aimed at him. Icy cold daggers stabbing into his sides, his back, his neck, his death was prominent around him. He could feel each one of them, both individually and as a whole unit pouring their killer intent onto his very existence. As of now he had no protection, no aegis to shield him from the feeling of literal death clutching him from all directions. Through it all Naruto kept his eyes on his captain. On his left, one wearing an eagle mask, to his right the another wearing a baboon's visage, the last one behind him, wearing a lion's mask. 6 empty and hollow eye holes boring into him. He would have blinked, but that would be showing weakness and that was what he could not tolerate. But to be honest he wasn't scared, he had seen worse. Compared to the Hokage, these guys had the killer intent of 7-year-old children, while not counting his killer intent as a 7-year-old. Still he didn't expect to be encircled like he was by his comrades as they are called. He sighed. The team, I presume? Saito nodded. Naruto still wanted to know how they always did that weird disappear/appear out of nowhere technique. Impressive, not even a flinch, you didn't even blink. Most of the new guys, when we do this, wet their pants. Sato's voice carried an odd static behind it when he spoke through his mask, as if he was speaking through a radio. Well, then I guess that I'm not most guys. Naruto responded coolly. A pithy response, my friend. Saito said. A shifting of clothes occurred behind him. Naruto's ears twitched at the sound. Another thing that he did not bother to investigate about himself, his extremely acute hearing. A static tone sounded after the ruffle of clothing. So this is the new kid, huh? It said. Based on the voice's bass, Naruto knew instantly that this person behind him was male. Not bothering to turn around, Naruto fired back. Yeah, I'm the new kid, what's it to you? There was no response, so Naruto turned around. In front of him stood a lion-faced Anbu garbed in the same attire as Saito. As Naruto stared into the blank holes on the Anbu's mask, he sneered. Well? The Anbu let out a chuckle. Kid, I don't think you know who you're talking to. He then placed his hand on Naruto's shoulder, which Naruto stared at vigorously. He then heard another voice to his left, this time it was female. Yeah, Naruto, I have heard rumors about you, but let me tell you that you're nowhere near as strong as Sakai is. Naruto turned to the female Anbu, donning an eagle mask, and chuckled. He remembered seeing her back when he took out that Jonin a year ago. Oh, on the contrary, I don't think that he'll be a problem, Naruto replied. Another static voice to his right this time. Don't you think that that's a little arrogant? This time it was man. He was the man in the baboon mask. Naruto also had a faint memory of him from 1 year ago. Naruto shrugged. Maybe, but it's the truth. He quickly grabbed the Anbu's arm, and as smoothly as flowing water, turned around and hurled him away. A prickling sensation entered Naruto's wrist when the lion-faced Sakai twisted his entire body so that he landed on his feet. I'm sorry, what was the truth again? He asked arrogantly before twisting and throwing Naruto over his body, this time with much more force than Naruto did with him. For an instant the world looped around and Naruto was in the air, looking directly into the Sakai's eye holes, his expression impassive. An instant later, time regained normal speed and the Anbu's mask went rushing away as he was thrown into a tree 20 yards away, cracking the wood. A rookie, attempting to best a veteran. Who the hell did this kid think he was? Walking up to Naruto's now upside-down body, embedded into a tree, the Anbu knelt down so that his face was level with Naruto's. Listen to me, he said, holding Naruto by the side of his head. Don't you ever do that again. If you do, I'll kill you. A glob of spit to his shiny mask was Naruto's response. You brat, you're dead now. Once again, like his captain, this Anbu was showing a lot of emotion. He must have been really strong. He pulled his fist back preparing to strike, then, surprisingly, he stopped, thrown off by an odd sensation in the back of his head. The finely polished blade of a kunai stuck out of the Anbu's skull, blood pouring from the wound. Nausea crept over him as he keeled over and yelled in pain, closing his eyes behind his mask. He opened them. Believe it or not, he was standing in front of Naruto, who was standing as well, a smirk on his face. His voice trailed off, making his confusion apparent. That, my friend, was a genjutsu, Naruto said, elaborating for the lion-faced Anbu. He was taken back. What genjutsu? When was he ever placed within the confines of said technique? It made no sense at all, no more sense than having your head impaled by a kunai, and then one blink later being completely untouched. When did you? His voice trailed off, replaced by a low groan of stupor. The flummoxed Umbu folded his arms and turned to his comrades. Was I really? When they all nodded, he turned back to Naruto. Naruto raised one finger. It's simple, really. You see, you never threw me into that tree over there, he said, pointing to the tree that Sakai thought that he tossed the boy into. By then you were already in my trap. What trap? When did you activate it? Technically, I did not activate it, you did. It's a basic genjutsu, a personal creation of mine, where whoever looks into the eyes of the user when he casts the genjutsu gets instantly pulled into it. It works with distance as well. The closer the eye contact is, the more powerful the genjutsu is and the less chakra I have to expend sustaining it. And since I caught you at point-blank range, I had to use little to no chakra at all. That was probably the reason why you didn't detect it. Sakai went over what just happened in his mind. Naruto said that he had been caught at point-blank range. If that's so, then that can only mean that their faces were a mere inches apart. That meant, so you hit me with it when I threw you? Correct, was Naruto's response. Even though I never hit the tree, I was thrown, and that's when I hit you with it. Bastard, but meh, that was fair. I'm Yuji Sakai. Naruto turned his head to his captain. Yuji? My brother, Saito said with a dismissive wave. Naruto turned to the other two Umbu, who introduced themselves as Shimatui. In the baboon mask and in the eagle mask was the only female member of the team, Haruno Yukari. Naruto questioned the name. Did you say Haruno? Naruto said, now noticing the stream of flowing hot pink hair behind the outline of Yukari's mask. Naruto surprised himself at how late he had picked it up. For someone as observant as he, one would think that he would have noticed something as obvious as hair color. Yes, I said Haruno. She responded, holding up a few locks of her pink hair. An Umbu from the Haruno clan. No offense, but I never thought there were any. I thought that the only nin in your clan, unfortunately, was Haruno Sakura. None taken. I'm well aware of my clan's status as a non-shinobi inhabited clan. In fact, me and my younger cousin Sakura are the only two. Wait, do you know her? Unfortunately, yes. I see. I know she can be a bit bombastic with her passions at times, but forgive her, she's only a young girl. Yukari said with a chuckle. Even though Naruto had only met her, he could tell right away that he would be able to get along with Yukari. Even though she was related to her, Yukari didn't seem at all like that feckless excuse for kunoichi that went under the name of Sakura. It was funny how two people whom were from the same clan could be so different. True, but her passions can be a tad bit annoying at times. Yukari giggled at the small sliver of sarcasm Naruto laced his tone with. Anyway, Naruto said, turning back to Saito, I've met the team now. I know their names, they now mine. What now? I'll be frank with this then. Saito began. I have received orders from the third himself saying that we are to patrol the outer perimeter of Konoha, meaning during this patrol, nobody should be inside the village. We are to remain outside until tomorrow, and return in the morning. Sakai, you take to the west, to the east, Yukari and I will head south, and that leaves you, Naruto, to cover the north. We are each to head in our separate directions, cut through the city and exit through the northern, southern, western and eastern gates. Is that all? Naruto asked. Oh, Naruto, I have a message from our Lord Hokage. He says that this is a test for you, to see how you will measure up in the actual field. He also says not to worry, this is one of the easier missions. That comment sparked a series of chuckles from the rest of the team, which caused Naruto to grumble. Geez, that's just like him. Whatever, is that everything? Naruto said, folding his arms. Yes, that's it, Saito said, tossing him a small black device. Radio? Naruto said, slipping it in his ear. Yes, we are all to stay within radio communication, and with a swift chopping motion he uttered one word, go. Then they were gone, leaving a single expanding ring of dust in their wake. How the hell do they do that? Naruto said, making a single hand sign before fading away. Moments later he appeared on the sturdy branch of a large tree. He was in the Forest of Death. He was to leave the village by cutting through and exiting through the northern gate. He had his orders and he was to follow them, no matter what. He was gone, bounding off the trees, and rapidly moving through the air. A blur of motion gliding through the darkness. Sanai snapped her eyes open. Okay, there was something wrong. First off, she could not see a thing, and in her mouth, she tasted something. Something awful, nasty. It tasted like crap, if that was what crap actually tasted like. But damn it, what the hell was this crap? As her vision returned, she noticed fine little black needles stick in front of her. That was weird, and why were they sideways? Upon further observation she realized that those little needles were blades of grass, and the reason why they were sideways was because her head was on the ground. Her eyes clicked left, and right then up she gasped. She was still in the Forest of Death. She could see the outlines of twisting branches and every few seconds the rustling of leaves. The sounds of a myriad of animals permeated the air, screeches and squeals and couple of howls, some clicks and every now and then a growl. Some of them sounded, for the most part, not dangerous at all, while others, well, let's just say Sanai wasn't willing to investigate the sources of those sounds. Sitting up on her bottom, she rubbed her forehead, feeling a rather large bump. Ow, my head, aug tua. Well, now she knew just what that horrible taste was. As long as it wasn't crap, she was happy. But on the other hand, dirt was the tastiest of substances. Wait, was her spit brown? You? Wiping her tongue with her shirt and standing up, she looked around. It was dark, really dark. How long had she been asleep exactly? I can't believe Anko-sensei, she really left me. Next time I see her, I'm going to give her a piece of my mind. Her foot hit the ground, followed by her other one, but she stopped. Where am I? She said in a scared tone. It seems that she was now aware of the fact she was in the middle of the forest of death while it was dark. That wasn't good. Hello? She yelled out lamely, her legs shaking a little bit. Her answer was a series of howls and shrieks from the resident animals in the forest. She knelt down and squeaked. Great idea. Alert the killer animals in the forest that you're there. Not you, brightest action. Sanai, dusting herself off, Sanai once again began walking through the forest. She could barely see a thing, and she couldn't remember the way Anko brought her into this stupid forest. Now how the hell was she supposed to get home? She yelped when a roar sounded off in the distance. Her pace quickened. Whatever that was, she didn't want to find out. Another howl. This time she screamed and broke out into a full sprint. The shallow and rapid sounds of her breath were the only things she heard, while excluding the loud patter of rapid footsteps behind her. Putting a little chakra into her step, she sprinted into an even faster run. Something was following her, and she did not like it. She was afraid. Letting out another scream, she leaped forth and placed herself among the treetops. She flew through the leaves like a little swallow afraid for its life, and that was exactly what she was, prey running from a predator. There was a crunch of several branches, each one getting closer to her, and seconds later another roar. Damn, whatever the hell this thing was, it was smart, and still following her. Frantic to get out of the forest, Sanai began leaping into air, above the treetops, in hopes of seeing which direction the village was. Where was it? Where was it? Had Anko really brought them out, this deep into the forest of death? While in mid-air, the dark tops of trees flew by underneath her until they rushed up to meet her, and she was back down among the branches. Still, that rather large thing was following her. Damn it! She tried once more, throwing herself above the canopy. Yes. This time she spotted it, the dark outline of the village to her right. Once again, Sanai went down into the trees, crossing her arms in front of her to shield her face just in case any branches decided to attack her. The branches came down fast. She saw one, small but sizable. It would be tricky to land on, but she was sure she could pull it off. As the branch came closer, she stuck one of her legs out. Bad idea. With a yelp, Sanai slipped forward off the branch, going into a fast plummet toward the ground. Before she knew it, air escaped her lungs and she was screaming with all her might. She couldn't help it. Fear did that to a person. Crack. She hit a branch, before going through several more branches that coincidentally softened, if you can even say the word softened, her landing. She landed on her side hard. Oh, my arm, that really hurt a dash. She was cut off by the sound of low growl. Her eyes snapped wide open. She had almost forgotten. She was being followed by something. The sound came from in front of her, a low raspy growl sending chills up her spine. Anko-sensei, if this is a joke, I'm not laughing. Then the sound of 4 paws lightly hitting the dirt came closer. This isn't funny anymore. A growl. Oh, okay, I admit I'm scared now. A roar. Sanai screamed. She held her hands up to her head and switched into the fetal position, her body shaking violently. 2 golden eyes opened in the darkness, staring directly at her, and behind them Sanai could see the faint outline of a large, rather feline body. She gasped and closed her eyes when a massive tiger came into view, its wide maw opened slightly so that Sanai could see its impressive array of teeth. That thing was huge, the biggest that she had ever seen in her life, and now the last. It brought its large muzzle to Sanai and sniffed the now whimpering girl. Please don't eat me. Please don't eat me. Please don't eat me. Sanai continued her desperate mantra in hopes that the animal, by some unknown thaumaturgy, turn its head and decide against making her its meal. Someone save me, please, I am scared. She yelped when she felt the slimy surface of the tiger's tongue rub against her face, causing her to let out an awe of disgust and fear. Anyone please. That's when she was cut off by the sound of someone laughing high above her. Seconds later she heard a thump and the tiger in front of her roar and moved back. Opening her eyes, she saw the same tiger, wildly shaking its head and bucking like a bull. On top of its cranium was Naruto. What the hell? Why was Naruto here? But she couldn't complain. If not for him, she surely would have been dinner. Pulling out a kunai, Naruto hung to the tiger's ear, his legs wrapped tightly around the animal's neck. Hee, you better look away, Sanai-chan. This might get bloody. She thought about it for seconds. Maybe she would look away, but she couldn't, transfixed by the sight in front of her. Without fear, Naruto clung to the animal. In fact, he was smiling. She could not believe it. How was Naruto doing this? Wasn't he scared or something? The tiger stopped jostling for just a moment, giving Naruto enough time to react. Cocking his arm back, Naruto struck the beast on its head, causing it to release a roar of pain as its head jerked up before it went down. Naruto was still holding onto the beast's ear, but it would not be like that anymore. Releasing roar, the tiger reared his head, this time with a bit more force than the other times. Alright, big boy, I'll get off, but first. Naruto grappled the tiger by its neck and jumped off, twisting his body and planting his feet on the ground so that his face was now next to the tiger's. Naruto's well-toned muscles rippled as he twisted the tiger, heaving it through the air and slamming it. No way, that was not Naruto. Sanai refused to believe it. There was just no way that a genin could be this strong and ruthless. Letting out a weak, defeated growl, the tiger slowly rose to its feet, wary of Naruto standing right there. That was funny. The hunter had now become the hunted. It stood and brought its mouth to Naruto's face, opening it while releasing a little growl. Naruto narrowed his eyes. The beast's breath smelled of blood and raw meat. Naruto said one thing. Leave. Quickly the tiger whipped its head around, with another growl, brushing its tail against Naruto's face. With another growl, it was gone. Hey Sanai-chan, what are you doing, chug? He was cut off by Sanai driving herself into his chest. Naruto, I was so scared, it started chasing me, and Sanai froze, realizing what she was doing. Although his chest did feel nice, she was sure that she did not want to be there. He wouldn't let her forget this moment. Sanai stepped back, sniffling. She wiped the tears from her face. Sorry, she said, her face red. And Naruto, what exactly are you doing here? He looked at her seriously. She held her breath. This was a completely different Naruto. Sanai, the question is, what exactly were you doing here? He placed both his hands on her shoulders and she blushed. Tell me. She looked away, training with my sensei. Training, right, and where is said sensei? If he wasn't mistaken, Mitarashi Anko was her Kono's sensei. Speaking of Kono, and hey, where's you sister? Sanai then told Naruto about how everything happened, how Anko brought them here to train, injured Kono, and how Sanai had fallen asleep expecting Anko to come back for her. Oh, yeah, that's what happened, and anyway, like I was saying, what were you doing here in the first place? He should have expected that, however, that wasn't something that she needed to know. Well, it would have been something esoteric in the past, but seeing as how he now had the right to tell whomever he wanted about his power, that was no the case anymore. If you must know, I'm on a mission. With your team and on the first day? Sanai's obvious disbelief made her tone seem all the more intent on finding out the truth. Truth she wanted and truth she would get. No, not with my team, he paused, at least not with the team that you know of. What the hell was he talking about? What other team could a genin possibly have on their first day as an official nin? That's when her Fumina wit kicked in. Something was wrong, she could just tell. First his odd clones, now this? She could tell that Naruto was hiding something. Even the dullest of people could figure this out. But it seemed that she wouldn't have investigated this, for Naruto would tell her on his own. What do you mean? She said, awaiting his next words with diligence. He sighed. Obviously this was something big. She could tell because his hands never left her shoulders, and that meant either he was trying to harass her, or he was being serious. Something told her that it was the latter. How can I say this? You know what? I'm just going to come right out and say this. The reason that I'm here is because I'm on a mission, an Umbu mission. Stop, time for a rewind. He was obviously lying. No, I'm being serious. Why were you out here? She said, laughing at what she thought was his excuse. I'm not lying, I'm being serious. I wouldn't be here if I weren't. Well, he did have a point, kind of. But that still did not mean that he was telling this truth. Listen, you shouldn't be out here. It's cold, and to be honest, you will most likely die out here. And what about you? Sanai asked, folding her arms. I can handle myself, Naruto said confidently. So don't worry. Naruto suddenly froze, to Sanai's surprise, and tapped his ear. Naruto here, he began. Upon further inspection she saw that Naruto was speaking into a small black radio earpiece. Maybe he was telling the truth. No, not yet, I'm heading there now. I got a little sidetracked along the way. over. He paused for a moment, Sanai's eyes never leaving his face. Yeah, I found something, a person, over. A female, a ranked genin of the village. Naruto then turned and gave her a quick look up and down. She's a Fumina, over. There was another period of silence where the absence of Naruto's voice allowed for the sounds of the forest to be heard. A second later Naruto resumed his conversation with whoever it was on the other side of that radio. I don't know all the details exactly, but I already questioned her. Apparently she and her teammate were brought here to train by their sensei, a certain Mitarashi Anko. And you know how she can get over. Another pause. I understand. I'm going to have to take a side track from this mission. I'll escort the Fumina back to the village. I don't think she'll be able to make it out by herself. After that I'll resume the mission as long as possible. Naruto sighed. Yeah, I know, whatever, over and out. With that Naruto let his hand fall from his ear and back onto Sanai's shoulder. He looked at her with unblinking eyes. Do you believe me? He asked. At the moment all she could do was nod, her head moving frantically up and down. At first she did not believe him, but the way he spoke just now, for some reason, convinced her. She still couldn't believe it. Well, it was more like she didn't want to accept it. She had always thought that she was pretty close to Naruto when it came to skill, and now she was coming to find out that he was skilled enough to join the Anbu all along. It kind of made her feel a bit weak inside. First of all, how did she not notice it before? How could she overlook such a prominent source of power sitting next to her every single day? Someone so powerful had been her friend. That was what he looked like just at that moment, powerful, in control, professional. If not for his unconvincing attire and lack of a face mask, she would have said that at that moment he looked exactly like an Anbu. He definitely had the aura of one, that was for sure. But what she was even more sure of was that she needed to get to hospital, and quickly. Naruto, I need to leave this place. Well, I know that he was cut off. No, you don't understand, I need to get to the hospital. I need to go see Kono now. She's in the hospital? Yes. Sanai had almost forgotten that she didn't tell Naruto that her sister was in the hospital when she was recapping all the events of her day. Can you take me there? Of course. He turned crouching down so that she could climb onto his back. She was, to say the least, a bit hesitant. I can still travel on my own, you know, but this way's faster, trust me. Honestly, she really didn't know if she could trust Naruto. He had been hiding such grave secrets from them. Who knew what else he could be hiding? Despite her diffidence, she still climbed onto her blonde friend's back. Hold tight, he said, and seconds later she wished that she had. They were traveling so fast that she almost fell off the instant they took flight. Since when was he so fast? He was crazy, no, insanely fast for his size. The wind whipped her face as if it was a solid substance trying to throw her off her blonde friend. For the most part the ride was silent and fast, oh so fast. Sanai really didn't mind the lack of speech between the two, although she had so many questions to ask him. Like how he got so strong and how long ago did he begin training. But at the moment, she just wanted to think. About a mile later, they were out of the trees and back into village. Naruto? HM? He said. Funny, he thought that she had fallen asleep. What is it? There was a brief pause. Thanks for saving me, back there. No problem. He actually expected her to question him some more. Maybe this info was just a bit too much for her to process at the moment. He probably would act the same way, probably not. The buildings flew by until they arrived at their destination, the hospital. Planting his feet on the ground, he let Sanai off. And here we are. I told you it'd be fast. All Sanai did was nod. Listen, as much as I want to see Kono right now, I have to get back to my mission. Sanai nodded. He turned to walk away. I'll come visit her in the morning. And he turned around. I'll tell you both everything when I get back, alright, I promise. She nodded again. With that he was gone, his body fading away like dispersing mist.